In the heat of the antebellum South, Lillian Rousseau's sheltered life as a plantation owner's daughter is forever changed when Malik, an enslaved man with quiet dignity, saves her from a devastating fire. Their forbidden connection ignites a dangerous journey toward freedom as they risk everything to escape north. Join them as they discover that true liberty comes from following one's heart against all odds. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The summer heat bore down on Willow Creek Valley like a heavy blanket. Lillian Rousseau stood on the veranda of her father's grand estate, fanning herself as she watched the workers in the cotton fields. At 21, she was the picture of southern beauty. Blonde hair neatly pinned, skin pale and protected from the harsh sun, and a blue silk dress that matched her eyes. "Lillian," her father's voice boomed from inside the house, "come inside this instant." She sighed and turned away from the railing. Her father, Edward Rousseau, was not a man who liked to be kept waiting. As the wealthiest plantation owner in the county, he was used to having his orders followed without question. Inside, the house was cooler. Servants moved silently through the rooms, dusting and polishing the fine furniture. Lillian barely noticed them. They were just part of the scenery, like the paintings on tea walls or the grand piano in the corner. Edward Rousseau sat in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, though it was barely past noon. At 55, he was still an imposing figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick grey beard and cold blue eyes. "You wanted to see me, Father?" Lillian asked, standing in the doorway. "Yes, the Hendersons are coming for dinner tonight. Their son, Thomas, will be joining them." He took a sip of his whiskey. "I expect you to make a good impression." Lillian's stomach tightened. She knew what that meant. Thomas Henderson was 35, a widower with a reputation for cruelty. But he owned the neighboring plantation, and a marriage would join the two properties together. "Yes, Father," she said quietly. "Good girl." He nodded. "Now go help the servants prepare, and wear your green dress tonight, it brings out your eyes." Lillian left the study, her hands trembling slightly. In the kitchen, servants were busy preparing for the evening's dinner. She noticed a tall, broad-shouldered man carrying a heavy crate of vegetables from the garden. Malik. He was different from the others, quieter, more dignified somehow. He kept to himself, but Lillian had heard he could read, something her father would punish severely if he ever found out. And as Malik set down the crate, their eyes met briefly. He quickly looked away, but not before Lillian saw something in his expression. A quiet defiance, perhaps. Or was it pity? "Miss Lillian," the cook said, "you shouldn't be in the kitchen. It's too hot in here for a lady like yourself." "I'm fine, Martha," Lillian replied. "Father asked me to oversee the preparations for tonight." Martha clucked her tongue, but didn't argue. Lillian moved through the kitchen, giving instructions, trying to ignore Malik's presence. But somehow she was always aware of him, his careful movements, the way he kept his eyes down, the strength in his hands as he worked. Later that afternoon, as Lillian was in her room getting ready for dinner, she heard raised voices outside. She moved to the window and saw her father confronting Malik in the yard. "You think you're better than the others, don't you?" Edward was saying, his voice slurred with drink. "I see the way you look at me, like you're judging me." Malik stood straight, his face expressionless. "No, sir. I was just doing my work." Edward raised his walking stick. "Don't lie to me, boy." Lillian turned away from the window, her heart pounding. She'd seen this before, her father's rage, the punishment that would follow. It was the way things were. It was normal. So why did her stomach twist with shame? The dinner that evening was everything Lillian had feared. Thomas Henderson was loud and crude, talking about his horses and his hunting trips, while looking at Lillian like she was a prize to be won. Her father encouraged him, laughing too loudly at his jokes, refilling his glass again and again. "Your daughter is a vision, Edward," Thomas said, his eyes lingering on Lillian's chest. "A man could do worse." "Indeed he could," Edward replied with a smile, "and I could think of no finer match for my Lillian." Lillian stared at her plate, moving the food around but barely eating. She felt like she couldn't breathe, like the walls of the dining room were closing in on her. "May I be excused for a moment?" she asked during a lull in the conversation. Her father frowned, but nodded. Don't be long. Lillian fled to the veranda, gulping in the night air. The moon was full, casting a silver light over the garden. In the distance, she could see the small cabins where the slaves lived. A single oil lamp burned in one of the windows. The door opened behind her, and Lillian stiffened, expecting her father or Thomas, but it was Martha, the cook. Miss Lillian, your father is asking for you, she said softly. Mr. Henderson is talking about taking you riding tomorrow. Lillian nodded, her throat tight. I'll be right there. As Martha turned to go, Lillian asked, Martha, do you know which cabin that is? The one with the light still on? Martha glanced toward the distant cabins. That's where Malik stays, miss. He shares it with old John and young Elijah. Malik, Lillian repeated softly. How long has he been here? I don't remember seeing him when I was younger. He came 4 years ago, miss. Your father bought him from the Wilsons when their plantation went under. Martha hesitated. He's a good worker, keeps to himself, doesn't cause trouble. Lillian nodded, still looking toward the cabin. Thank you, Martha. I'll come back inside now. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Thomas Henderson made it clear he intended to court Lillian, and her father made it equally clear he approved. By the time the Hendersons left, it was well past midnight and Lillian's cheeks hurt from forcing smiles. He'll make you a fine husband, Edward said as they stood in the foyer. The wedding will be next spring. That gives you plenty of time to prepare. Father, Lillian began, but the look in his eyes stopped her. There was no room for argument, no space for her feelings or desires. It's decided, he said firmly. Now go to bed. You have riding tomorrow. Lillian climbed the stairs to her room, feeling like she was walking to her own execution. Inside, her maid, Sarah, was waiting to help her undress. Did you have a nice evening, Miss Lillian? Sarah asked as she unfastened the buttons at the back of Lillian's dress. It was fine, Lillian replied automatically. Then, after a moment, Sarah, do you know Malik, the one who works in the garden sometimes? Sarah's hands paused briefly. Yes, miss. I know him. What's he like? Sarah hesitated. He's quiet, miss. Keeps to himself. But he's kind to the younger ones. Teaches them things when the overseer isn't looking. Teaches them what? Sarah looked uncomfortable. Just things they need to know, miss. How to stay out of trouble, how to... Sha'i trailed off. How to read, Lillian guessed. Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. Oh no, miss. That would be... he wouldn't... It's all right, Lillian assured her. I won't tell anyone. Sarah nodded, but her hands trembled as she finished helping Lillian into her nightgown. Will that be all, miss? Yes, thank you, Sarah. After Sarah left, Lillian sat by her window for a long time, looking out at the cabin where Malik lived. The light was out now, but she couldn't stop thinking about him. About the look in his eyes when he'd seen her in the kitchen, about the way he'd stood tall and dignified, even as her father threatened him. In the days that followed, Lillian found herself noticing Malik more and more. He was always working, in the garden, repairing a fence, carrying heavy loads that no one else could lift. Sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, his expression would change, the mask of subservience slipping to reveal something else, intelligence, pride, and a deep, burning anger. Thomas Henderson came to call 3 times that week, bringing flowers and small gifts. Lillian accepted them with practiced politeness, laughing at his jokes and listening to his stories. But her mind was elsewhere, distracted by glimpses of Malik working in the yard, by the questions she couldn't stop asking herself. One evening after Thomas had left, and her father H had retired to his study with a bottle of whiskey, Lillian slipped out to the garden. The air was heavy with the scent of magnolias, and fireflies danced among the trees. She walked toward the small tool shed where she'd seen Malik working earlier that day. He was still there, putting away tools in the fading light. When he saw her, he froze, then quickly lowered his eyes. Miss Rousseau, he said, his voice deep and controlled. Can I help you with something, G? Lillian hesitated, suddenly unsure why she'd come. I wanted to thank you for fixing the garden gate. It's been squeaking for months. Malik looked up, surprised. Just doing my job, miss. Lillian nodded, feeling foolish. Of course he was just doing his job. What had she expected? "Sarah tells me you teach the younger ones," she said after an awkward silence. "That's kind of you." Malik's expression became guarded. "I just try to help them stay out of trouble, miss." "And you teach them to read, don't you?" His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "Who told you that?" "No one," Lillian said quickly. "I guessed. I've seen you with books sometimes, when you think no one's looking." Malik said nothing, but his jaw tightened. "I won't tell anyone," Lillian assured him. "I think it's admirable." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Lillian felt something shift between them. It was as if he was seeing her for the first time, not as Miss Rousseau, the master's daughter, but as a person. "Why are you here, miss?" he asked quietly. Lillian didn't have an answer, not one that made sense anyway. "I don't know," she admitted. I wanted to talk to you." Malik studied her for a long moment, then said, "It's getting dark, miss. You should go back to the house." Lillian nodded, feeling dismissed. "Yes, of course. Good night, Malik." "Good night, Miss Rousseau." As she walked back to the house, Lillian felt confused and unsettled. Why had she sought him out? What was she looking for? The next few weeks passed in a blur of social calls and wedding preparations. Thomas Henderson made his proposal official, presenting Lillian with a large diamond ring that felt like a shackle on her finger. Her father was delighted, already planning how to merge the two plantations. Lillian went through the Motians, smiling when expected, saying all the right things. But inside she felt hollow, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. And always in the background was Malik, working in the garden, carrying water to the house, fixing things that broke. Sometimes their eyes would meet, and Lillian would feel a jolt of something. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. One evening, as a summer storm rolled in, Lillian sat in the library reading while the rain pounded against the windows. The rest of the household had retired early, and she relished the rare solitude. A loud crash of thunder made her jump, and suddenly the room was plunged into darkness. The oil lamp on her table had gone out. Lillian fumbled in the dark, trying to find the matches. "Here, miss," a deep voice said, and a match flared to life, illuminating Malik's face. He was holding a candle, which he used to relight her lamp. "Thank you," Lillian said, startled by his presence. "What are you doing here?" "Your father asked me to check the windows before the storm hit," Malik explained. "Make sure they were all secure." Lillian nodded, noticing that his shirt was damp from the rain. "You're wet. You should dry off before you catch cold." Malik looked surprised by her concern. "I'll be fine, miss." Another crash of thunder shook the house, and the wind howled outside. Malik moved to the window, checking that it was properly latched. "What are you reading?" he asked, nodding toward the book in her hands. Lillian glanced down at the volume of poetry in her lap. "Keats," she said. "Do you know him?" A small smile touched Malik's lips. "Beauty is truth. Truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know." Lillian stared at him, amazed. "You know Keats." "I had a good teacher once," Malik said, his expression distant. "Beth. Or I came here." Lillian wanted to ask more, but at that moment they heard footsteps in the hallway. Malik immediately moved away from her, picking up a broom that was leaning against the wall and pretending to sweep. Edward Rousseau appeared in the doorway, swaying slightly. He'd been drinking again. "What's going on here?" he demanded, looking from Lillian to Malik. "The storm blew out my lamp," Lillian explained quickly. "Malik was checking the window S and relit it for me." Edward's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Is that right, boy?" "Yes, sir," Malik said, eyes lowered. "Just doing as you asked, checking the windows before the storm." Edward grunted. "Well, you're done now. Get back to your quarters." "Yes, sir." Malik left without looking at Lillian, taking the broom with him. Edward turned his attention to his daughter. "You shouldn't be alone with any of them, Lillian, especially not that one." "Why especially not him?" Lillian asked before she could stop herself. Edward's expression darkened. He's got ideas above his station, thinks he's better than what he is. He took a step closer to Lillian, his voice lowering. I've seen the way he looks sometimes, like he's just waiting for his chance. His chance for what? Lillian asked, genuinely confused. To run, Edward spat. Or worse. He shook his head. Never mind that. Thomas is coming tomorrow to discuss wedding plans. I want you to be agreeable, you hear me? Yes, father, Lillian said automatically. Good girl. He patted her cheek, a little too hard. Now off to bed with you. That night, Lillian lay awake, listening to the storm rage outside. She couldn't stop thinking about Malik quoting Keats, about the brief glimpse she'd had of the man behind the mask he wore every day. Who was he really? What dreams and hopes did he harbor in the silence of his heart? And why couldn't she stop thinking about him? The storm continued through the night and into the next day. By evening, the wind had picked up again, rattling the windows and howling through the trees. Thomas Henderson had come and gone, leaving Lillian with a headache from his loud voice and rough laughter. Her father was in his study, already halfway through a bottle of whiskey. The servants moved quietly through the house, lighting lamps. His darkness fell early under the storm clouds. Lillian was in the parlor playing the piano to distract herself when she heard her father's voice rise in anger. A crash followed, the sound of glass breaking. She hurried to the study and found Edward standing over Malik, who was kneeling, picking up pieces of a broken decanter. Whiskey was spreading across the polished wood floor. "Clumsy fool," Edward shouted. "That was crystal." "I'm sorry, sir," Malik said, his voice steady despite the rage directed at him. "I'll clean it up right away." "Father, it was an accident," Lillian said, stepping into the room. "The storm has everyone on edge." Edward turned to her, his face flushed with drink and anger. "Stay out of this, Lillian. Go back to your piano." "But now," he roared. Lillian retreated, her heart pounding. From the parlor, she could still hear her father's angry voice, though she couldn't make out the words. A few minutes later, Malik emerged from the study, his face expressionless. But as he passed the parlor doorway, Lillian saw a cut on his cheek, a thin line of blood trailing down to his jaw. Without thinking, she rose from the piano bench and followed him to the kitchen. He was at the sink, wetting a cloth to press against his face. "Let me see," Lillian said, taking the cloth from his hand. Malik stiffened. "Miss Rousseau, you shouldn't be here." "Hold still," she insisted, gently pressing the damp cloth to his cheek. The cut wasn't deep, but it would leave a mark. "I'm sorry about my father." Malik looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. "Why are you sorry? You didn't do anything." "Exactly," Lillian said, a lump forming in her throat. "I never do anything." For a long moment they stood there, too close, the air between them charged with something Lillian couldn't name. Then Malik gently took the cloth from her hand, his fingers brushing against hers. "You should go back to the house, miss," he said softly, "before someone sees you here." Lillian nodded, suddenly aware of how improper this was, how dangerous, but she didn't move. "What was it like?" she asked impulsively. "Where you came from? Before here?" A shadow passed over Malik's face. "Different," he said after a pause. "I had a family there, a mother, 2 sisters. Do you know what happened? Enid to them?" He shook his head. "They were sold, separately." His voice was flat, but Lillian could hear the pain beneath the words. "I'm sorry," she whispered, knowing how inadequate that was. A flash of lightning illuminated the kitchen, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The house shook, and somewhere upstairs, something fell with a crash. "You should check on your father," Malik said, moving away from her. "I need to make sure everything's secure for the night." Lillian nodded and reluctantly headed back to the main part of the house. Her father was still in his study, now slumped in his chair, the empty whiskey bottle on the floor beside him. He was snoring loudly, passed out drunk as he often was these days. Lillian covered him with a blanket and closed the door. The house felt strange, tense, as if the storm outside had somehow crept inside as well. As she climbed the stairs to her bedroom, Lillian caught a whiff of something, an acrid smell that made her nose wrinkle. Smoke? She hurried up the remaining stairs and saw a thin haze in the hallway. The smell was stronger here. "Fire!" she cried out, panic rising in her throat. "Fire in the house!" Servants came running, and soon the house was in chaos. The fire had started in an empty bedroom. An oil lamp had been knocked over by the wind coming through an unlatched window. The curtains had caught first, then the rug, then the wooden furniture. By the time Lillian realized what was happening, the entire east wing of the third floor was engulfed in flames. Thick smoke filled the hallways, making it hard to see, hard to breathe. "Everyone out!" someone was shouting. "Get out now!" Lillian started toward the stairs, but a sudden rush of flame blocked her path. She turned, coughing, and tried to find another way down. But the smoke was disorienting and the heat was becoming unbearable. She stumbled into her bedroom and slammed the door, trying to keep the smoke out. The window. She needed to get to the window, but as she crossed the room, she heard a terrible cracking sound. Part of the ceiling collapsed, sending burning debris crashing down between her and the window. Lillian screamed, backing away from the flames. She was trapped. Outside, Malik had been helping to form a bucket line from the well to the house when he realized Lillian wasn't among those who had escaped. "Where's Miss Rousseau?" he asked Martha, who was huddled with the other servants at a safe distance. "I don't know," Martha said, her voice shaking. "I thought she came out with the others." Malik looked up at the burning house, at the third-floor windows where smoke was billowing out. Without hesitation, he ran toward the front door. "What are you doing?" someone shouted. "It's too dangerous," but Malik didn't stop. He plunged into the smoke-filled foyer and up the stairs, calling Lillian's name. The heat was intense, the smoke so thick he could barely see, but he kept going, pulling his shirt up over his mouth and nose, staying low where the air was clearer. "Lillian!" he shouted, abandoning formality in the face of danger. "Where are you?" A faint cry came from down the hall. Her bedroom. Malik made his way toward the sound, the floorboards hot beneath his feet, the walls beginning to crack and groan around him. When he reached, he found it jammed shut. He could hear Lillian coughing inside, growing weaker. With a surge of desperate strength, Malik threw himself against the door. It splintered and gave way. Inside, the room was a scene from hell, flames dancing across the ceiling, smoke so thick it was like twilight. And there, huddled in the corner furthest from the fire, was Lillian. "Malik," she gasped, her face streaked with soot and tears. "You came back." "I'm going to get you out," he promised, making his way to her. The floor creaked ominously beneath him. Lillian shook her head, coughing. "There's no way out. The hall is on fire and the window—" She gestured to where burning debris blocked their path. Malik looked around quickly, assessing their options. Then he moved to the bed, stripping off the sheets and tying them together. "We're going out the window," he said, his voice calm despite the danger, "but we need to clear a path." He grabbed a heavy chair and hurled it at the burning debris, scattering it enough to create a narrow path to the window. The heat was searing, but Malik didn't hesitate. He wrapped one of the sheets around Lillian, covering her head and body as best he could. "Stay close to me," he instructed, taking her hand. "When I say, run, run." Lillian nodded, her eyes wide with fear but trusting. "Now!" Malik shouted, and they dashed through the narrow path to the window. The flames licked at them and Lillian cried out as her dress caught fire at the hem. Malik quickly beat out the flames with his bare hands, ignoring the pain as his skin blistered. At the window, Malik broke the glass with his elbow, clearing the sharp edges. He tied one end of the makeshift rope to the heavy bedpost that was bolted to the floor, then threw the other end out the window. "It won't reach all the way down," he told Lillian, "but it will get us to the second-floor roof. From there, we can jump." The house was groaning around them now, the structure beginning to fail. There was no time left. "You go first," Malik said, helping Lillian onto the windowsill. She looked at him, terrified. "I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "I'll be right behind you, I promise." With trembling hands, Lillian gripped the sheet rope and began to lower herself from the window. Malik held the rope steady, ignoring the burning pain in his hands. He watched as she made it safely to the second-floor roof, then quickly followed. The roof was steep and slick with rain, but they managed to reach the edge. Below, a group of servants had gathered, holding blankets stretched between them to break their fall. "Jump!" someone called from below. "Now, before the roof caves in!" Lillian hesitated, looking at Malik. In that moment, something passed between them, a recognition, a connection that went beyond master and slave, beyond the roles they'd been born into. "Together," Malik said, taking her hand, and they jumped. The fall seemed to last forever, and then they hit the outstretched blankets with a jarring impact. Hands reached for them, pulling them to safety just as a massive section of the house collapsed in a shower of sparks and flame. Lillian lay on the wet grass, gasping for breath, her lungs burning from the smoke. Beside her, Malik was equally winded, his hands raw and blistered, his face streaked with soot. "You saved me," she whispered when she could speak again. "Why?" Malik looked at her, his dark eyes reflecting the flames of the burning house. "Because someone had to," he said simply. But in that moment, with death so close they could feel its breath on their necks, they both knew it was more than that. Much more. The fire raged through the night, consuming most of the main house. By dawn, only the west wing remained standing, blackened with smoke, but still structurally sound. The servants had worked tirelessly alongside neighbors who came to help, forming bucket brigades from the well to save what they could. Edward Rousseau had been pulled from his study, half-conscious and choking on smoke. Now he sat on a chair in the yard, a blanket around his shoulders, watching his home burn with bloodshot eyes. "This is your fault," he said, when he spotted Malik helping the injured. "You were supposed to check all the windows." Malik said nothing, his face expressionless as he continued to bandage a kitchen maid's burned arm. "Father, stop," Lillian said firmly. She was sitting nearby, wrapped in a blanket, her hair loose and wild around her face. "Malik saved my life. If he hadn't come back for me, I would have died in that fire." Edward's face darkened. "What was he doing in your bedroom in the first place?" "He wasn't," Lillian began, but Malik cut her off. "I heard her calling for help," he said, his voice steady. "I went upstairs to get her out." Edward looked between them, suspicion clouding his features. But before he could say more, Dr. Wilson arrived from town, summoned by one of the neighbors. "Good God," the doctor said, surveying the scene. "Was anyone killed?" "No," Lillian answered, "but to hear our injuries, my father inhaled a lot of smoke, and some of the servants have burns." "Let me see to your father first, then I'll check the others," Dr. Wilson said, moving to Edward's side. While the doctor examined her father, Lillian approached Malik, who was now sitting alone by the well, his burned hands resting on his knees. "Let me see," she said softly, kneeling beside him. Malik hesitated, then held out his hands. The palms were raw and blistery, arid, angry red where he'd beaten out the flames on her dress and gripped the hot rope. "You need the doctor to look at these," Lillian said, her throat tight with emotion. "They could get infected." "Others need help more than I do," Malik replied. Lillian shook her head. "Your hands are important. How will you—" She trailed off, realizing how silly her concern would sound. "How will you work? How will you serve us?" That's not what she meant at all. "I'll be fine," Malik assured her, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. Lillian looked into his eyes, seeing something there that made her heart beat faster. "Thank you," she whispered, "for coming back for me, for risking your life." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Malik said quietly, "I couldn't leave you there." The simple words carried a weight that Lillian felt in her chest, a pressure that was both painful and sweet. Their moment was interrupted by Martha, who approached with a basin of clean water and some strips of cloth. "Miss Lillian, you should rest," the older woman said. "I'll tend to Malik's hands." Lillian reluctantly stood. "Yes, of course, thank you, Martha." As she walked away, she felt Malik's eyes on her back, and something stirred inside her, a feeling she had no name for, but that frightened and excited her all at once. In the days that followed, the Rousseau household moved Dee into the old guest house at the edge of the property. It was small but solid, with 4 bedrooms and a modest parlor. The servants were housed in the stable and carriage house, cramped but safe until repairs could begin on the main house. Edward Rousseau, recovering from smoke inhalation and the shock of losing most of his home, grew increasingly irritable and demanding. He drank more heavily than ever, berating the servants for the smallest mistakes, especially Malik. "Keep him away from the house," he ordered the overseer one morning. "Put him to work in the fields." Lillian, who was arranging flowers in the parlor, looked up in alarm. "Father, that's not fair. Malik's hands are still healing. He can't work in the fields." Edward turned to her, eyes narrowed. "Since when do you concern yourself with the work assignments of slaves? I just think—" "You don't think," her father cut her off harshly. "You do as you're told, like everyone else on this plantation." Lillian fell silent, but her heart was pounding with an unfamiliar feeling. Anger. She had always been obedient, always done what was expected of her. But now, after the fire, something had changed. She had changed. Later that day, she slipped away from the house and walked toward the cotton fields. The summer sun was merciless, beating down on the backs of the workers as they moved through the rows. Lillian spotted Malik at the far end, struggling to pick cotton with his bandaged hands. She approached him, ignoring the surprised looks from the other workers. "You shouldn't be out here," she said, her voice low but urgent. "Your hands need time to heal." Malik straightened, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. "Miss Rousseau, you shouldn't be here. The overseer—" "I don't care about the overseer," Lillian interrupted. "This isn't right. You saved my life." Malik glanced around, aware that others were watching. "Please, miss, go back to the house. You're only making things harder." Lillian wanted to argue, to insist he come with her, but she saw the warning in his eyes. The overseer was watching from his horse at the edge of the field, his whip hanging loose and ready at his side. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "But this isn't over." She returned to the guest house, her mind racing. For the first time in her life, she was seeing clearly the cruelty of the system she had been born into, the injustice that she had always accepted as normal. And it was all because of Malik, because of the way he had looked at her in the fire, the way he had risked everything to save her. That evening, Thomas Henderson came to call, bringing news that the wedding venue he had been considering was available for the spring date they had discussed. "It's settled then," Edward said, raising his glass in a toast. "May 1st, you two will be married." Thomas smiled broadly, his hand possessively covering Lillian's on the sofa. "I can't wait to make you my wife," he said, his voice thick with meaning. Lillian forced a smile, but inside she was screaming. The thought of being Thomas Henderson's wife, of sharing his bed, of bearing his children, it was unbearable. Yet what choice did she have? After Thomas left, Lillian sat in her small bedroom staring out the window at the moon rising over the fields. In the distance, she could see the lights of the cabins where the slaves slept. Was Malik there now? Were his hands paining him? Was he thinking of her as she was thinking of him? The next morning, Lillian woke early and went to the kitchen, where Martha was already preparing breakfast. "Martha," she said quietly, "I need your help." The older woman looked up, her face wary. "What kind of help, Miss Lillian?" "I need to speak with Malik. Privately." Martha's eyes widened. "Miss Lillian, that's not a good idea. Your father—" "I know," Lillian interrupted, "but it's important. Please, Martha, I just need a few minutes." Martha studied her face, then sighed. "He'll be bringing water to the kitchen garden this afternoon. I can ask him to check the shed for some tools I need. But Miss Lillian, be careful. Eyes are everywhere on the S plantation, and your father is already suspicious." "Thank you, Martha," Lillian said, squeezing the woman's hand gratefully. That afternoon, Lillian slipped out to the garden shed, her heart pounding with nervousness. What was she doing? This was madness. And yet she couldn't stop herself. Malik arrived a few minutes later, carrying a bucket of water. When he saw her waiting in the shed, he stopped in the doorway. "Miss Rousseau," he said formally, "Ma Eartha said you wanted to see me." "Yes," Lillian replied, suddenly uncertain. I wanted to see how your hands are healing." Malik held them out wordlessly. The bandages were dirty from work, and spots of blood had seeped through in places. "They're worse," Lillian said, dismayed. "You need clean bandages." "I'll manage," Malik replied. Lillian took a step closer to him. "Why did you do it?" she asked. the question that had been burning in her mind for days. "Why did you come back for me in the fire? You could have died." Malik looked at her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "I told you someone had to." "That's not an answer," Lillian insisted. "You risked your life. Why?" Malik turned away, setting down the water bucket. "What does it matter?" "It's done." "It matters to me," Lillian said softly. Malik's shoulders tensed, then relaxed on a sigh. "I couldn't let you die," he said, his back still to her. "Not you." "Why not me?" Lillian pressed, taking another step toward him. "What makes me different from anyone else in that house?" Malik turned to face her then, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "You see me," he said simply, "not as a slave, not as property. You see me as a man." The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Lillian felt dizzy, as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "And how do you see me?" she whispered. Malik's eyes traveled over her face, lingering on her lips. "As a woman," he said, his voice low and rough. "A woman trapped in a cage she doesn't even know exists." The truth of his words struck Lillian like a physical blow. That's exactly what she was, a prisoner who had never questioned her bars until now. "Help me," she said impulsively. "Help me understand. What's out there beyond this plantation? What's it like to be free?" Malik shook his head. "I wouldn't know. I was born into slavery." "But you dream of freedom," Lillian said, not a question but a statement. "Everyone dreams of freedom," Malik replied, "even those who don't know they're captive." The sound of voices outside made them both stiffen. Malik moved quickly to the door, checking to see who was approaching. "It's the overseer," he said urgently. "You need to go now. Use the back path through the roses." Lillian nodded, her heart racing. But before she left, she impulsively reached out and touched Malik's arm. "Meet me here again," she whispered. "Tomorrow. Same time." Malik's expression was troubled. "Miss Rousseau." "Lillian," she corrected him. "My name is Lillian." Their eyes held for a moment, and then Malik nodded once. "Tomorrow," he agreed. Lillian slipped out the back way, hurrying through the rose garden and around to the front of the guest house as if she'd been out for a stroll. Her mind was whirling, her heart pounding with emotions she had never felt before. That night she dreamed of the fire again, but this time it was different. In the dream, she and Malik escaped the burning house and kept running, far away from the Pierre Lantation, from her father, from Thomas Henderson. They ran until they reached a place where no one knew them, where they could be whoever they wanted to be. She woke with tears on her cheeks, the dream so vivid she could almost smell the smoke. The next day dragged endlessly as Lillian waited for her chance to slip away to the garden shed. Her father was in a foul mood, complaining about delays in the repair work on the main house, about the cost of rebuilding, about the laziness of the slaves. "And where is that Henderson boy?" he demanded over lunch. "He should be here helping us get back on our feet if he's to be part of this family." "He mentioned business in Charleston," Lillian said, pushing food around her plate. "He'll be back next week." Edward grunted. "At least he's a man of action, not like these worthless." He broke off into a fit of coughing, his lungs still sensitive from the smoke. Lillian passed him a glass of water, her mind elsewhere. Finally, in the late afternoon, she saw her chance. Her father had fallen asleep in his chair, and the household was quiet. She slipped out the back door and made her way to the garden shed. Malik was already there, standing in the shadows, his expression guarded. "You came," Lillian said, suddenly shy. "I said I would," Malik replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lillian reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bundle. "I brought clean bandages," she said, "and some salve that Dr. Wilson left." Malik hesitated, then held out his hands. Lillian carefully unwrapped the dirty bandages, wincing at the sight of his raw, blistered palms. "This will sting," she warned as she applied the salve. Malik didn't flinch, watching her face as she worked. Her hands were gentle, her touch light, but he felt it like a brand on his skin. "Why are you doing to his?" he asked softly. Lillian kept her eyes on her task. "Because you helped me. Because you're hurt." "It's dangerous," Malik said. "If your father found out—" "I know," Lillian interrupted, looking up at him, "but I don't care." The intensity in her eyes made Malik step back, breaking the contact between them. "You should care," he said, his voice harder. "Do you know what would happen to me if we were caught here like this?" Lillian's face paled. "I wouldn't." "They would," Malik cut her off. "Your father would have me whipped to death or worse." "I wouldn't let that happen," Lillian insisted. Malik gave a bitter laugh. "And how would you stop it? You have no power here, Lillian. Not really. You're as much a prisoner as I am." The words stung because they were true. Lillian finished bandaging his hands in silence, her thoughts in turmoil. "Tell me about your family," she said finally. "You mentioned dear mother and sisters. What were they like?" Malik's expression softened slightly. "My mother was strong, stubborn. She used to sing while she worked, old songs from Africa that her grandmother taught her." He paused, lost in memory. "My sisters were twins, always finishing each other's sentences, always laughing together." "You must miss them terribly," Lillian said. Malik nodded, his eyes distant. "Every day." "If you could go anywhere," Lillian asked, "where would you go, if you were free?" Malik considered the question. "North," he said finally. "To Canada, maybe. Somewhere I could be my own man, work my own land." "What would you grow?" A small smile touched his lips. "Wheat, maybe, or corn. Something that grows tall and strong in the sun." Lillian could see it in her mind's eye. Malik standing in a field of golden wheat, his face turned up to the sky, free and proud and happy. The image made her heart ache. "What about you?" Malik asked, surprising her. "If you could go anywhere, where would it be?" Lillian considered. "I've always wanted to see New York," she admitted. "Or Boston, somewhere with libraries and theaters and music." "You'd like that," Malik said. "You have a curious mind." Lillian looked at him, startled. "How do you know that?" "I've watched you," Malik said simply. "The way you read, the questions you ask, you're not like the others around here." The admission made Lillian blush. "I've watched you too," she confessed. "The way you stand so straight, even when they try to break you. The way you help the younger ones, the way you—" She trailed off, embarrassed by how much she had noticed, how much she had seen. Malik took a step toward her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. "The way I what?" he asked, his voice low. Lillian looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Hey, way you look at me sometimes," she whispered. "Like you can see right through me." Their eyes held, and in that moment, everything around them seemed to fade away. The plantation, their different stations, the world that kept them apart. There was only this small shed, this stolen moment, and the connection between them that grew stronger with each passing second. Malik reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Lillian stayed perfectly still, as his bandaged hand gently touched her cheek. His touch was feather-light, almost reverent, and Lillian felt tears spring to her eyes at the tenderness of it. "This is madness," Malik whispered, but he didn't drop his hand. "I know," Lillian replied, her voice barely audible, "but I can't help it." Malik's eyes darkened, and he leaned forward, his face inches from hers. Lillian's breath caught in her throat, her heart hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. And then, from outside came the sound of approaching footsteps and voices. They sprang apart just as the door opened, revealing Edward Rousseau, his face contorted with rage, and behind him the overseer, a whip in his hand. "I knew it," Edward spat, looking from Lillian to Malik. "I knew something was going on." "Father, it's not what you think," Lillian began, stepping forward. "I was just changing his bandages. His hands—" "Silence!" Edward roared, backhanding her across the face so hard she stumbled and fell. Malik lunged forward instinctively, but the overseer was faster, cracking the whip across his back. Malik grunted in pain but remained standing, his eyes fixed on Lillian, who was touching her bleeding lip in shock. "Take him," Edward ordered the overseer. "Chain him in the barn. I'll deal with him later." "No!" Lillian cried, scrambling to her feet. "Father, please, he saved my life. I in the fire. You can't—" "I can do whatever I want on my own plantation," Edward snarled, grabbing her arm roughly. "And you will go to your room and stay there until I decide what to do with you." As the overseer dragged Malik away, Lillian caught one last glimpse of his face. Not angry, not afraid, but filled with a quiet resolve that chilled her to the bone. Edward pulled her back to the guest house, his grip bruising on her arm. Servants scattered out of their way, eyes downcast, pretending not to see. Only Martha dared to look, her face creased with worry as she watched Lillian being dragged upstairs. "You've disgraced this family," Edward hissed as he shoved her into her bedroom. "Meeting a slave in secret, touching him, letting him touch you." "It wasn't like that," Lillian protested, though her flushed cheeks betrayed her. "We were just talking." "Talking?" Edward laughed harshly. "Is that what they see all it now?" "Nothing happened," Lillian insisted, her voice stronger now, anger replacing fear. "And even if it had, what right do you have to judge? He's a man, not property." Edward's face darkened dangerously. "He is property, my property, and you are my daughter, and you will do as I say." "Or what?" Lillian challenged, a new boldness surging through her. "What will you do, father? Beat me like you beat them? Sell me to the highest bidder?" Edward's H shot out, grabbing her throat, pushing her against the wall. "You watch your mouth, girl," he growled, his breath hot with whiskey. "I've indulged your willfulness for too long. You will marry Thomas Henderson as planned, and you will never speak to that slave again. Do you understand me?" Lillian clawed at his hand, gasping for breath. She nodded frantically, and he released her, watching coldly as she collapsed to the floor, coughing. "I've sent for Thomas," Edward said, straightening his jacket. "He'll be here tomorrow. The wedding will be moved up. No more waiting until spring. You'll be married within the month." Lillian looked up at him in horror. "A month? But the house isn't even rebuilt, and the preparations—" "We'll manage," Edward cut her off. "The important thing is to get you under a husband's control before you completely ruin yourself." With that, he left, locking the door behind him. Lillian heard his heavy footsteps descending the stairs, then the slam of the front door as he went out, presumably to the barn where Malik was being held. Panic rose in her throat. What would her father do to Malik? The thought of him being beaten or worse because of her was unbearable. She had to do something, had to stop it somehow. Lillian went to the window, but it was too high to jump safely. She tried the door again, rattling the handle uselessly. She was trapped, just as Malik had said, a prisoner in a different kind of cage. Hours passed, night fell. Lillian pressed her ear to the door, listening for any sound that might tell her what was happening. But the house was quiet, eerily so. Finally, she heard soft footsteps in the hall and a gentle knock at her door. "Miss Lillian?" It was Martha's voice, barely above a whisper. "Are you awake?" "Yes," Lillian answered quickly, moving to the door. "Martha, what's happening? Where's Malik? What did my father do to him?" There was a pause, then the sound of a key turning in the lock. The door opened, revealing Martha's worried face. "I shouldn't be doing this," the older woman said, glancing nervously down the hall. "But I couldn't just leave you locked up like this." "Thank you," Lillian said, her voice breaking. "Please tell me about Malik." Martha's face grew solemn. "Your father had him whipped," she said softly. 10 lashes. It would have been more, but Dr. Wilson arrived and put a stop to it. "Is he—" Lillian couldn't finish the question. "He's alive," Martha assured her. "The doctor treated his wounds and gave him something for the pain. He's in the slave quarters now with the others looking after him." Relief washed over Lillian, followed quickly by guilt. "This is my fault," she whispered. "I asked him to meet me." Martha touched her arm gently. "Miss Lillian, you need to be careful. Your father is in a dangerous mood, and he's serious about the wedding. Mr. Henderson is arriving tomorrow afternoon." Lillian nodded, her mind racing. "I need to see Malik," she said suddenly. "Tonight, while everyone's asleep." Martha's eyes widened in alarm. "Miss Lillian, no. Haven't you learned your lesson? Your father would kill him this time, and you too, maybe." "I have to make sure he's all right, Lillian," I insisted. "I have to apologize." Martha shook her head firmly. The best thing you can do for Malik right now is stay away from him. Your father has already decided to sell him. He's contacting buyers tomorrow. Lillian felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. Sell him? No, he can't do that. He can, and he will, Martha said, her voice tinged with resignation. He's the master here, Miss Lillian. His word is law. Lillian sank onto the edge of her bed, her legs suddenly too weak to support her. The thought of Malik being taken away, being sold to some unknown master who might be even crueler than her father, was unbearable. There must be something I can do, she said desperately. Martha gave her a long, measuring look. There's nothing any of us can do, she said finally, except pray. After Martha left, locking the door again to avoid suspicion, Lillian paced her room, her mind racing. She wouldn't let this happen. She couldn't let Malik be sold away because of her foolishness. But what could she do? She was as powerless as Martha said. A woman in a man's world, with no money of her own, no freedom to come and go as she pleased. Unless... A wild, desperate idea began to form in her mind. It was madness, of course. Dangerous beyond measure. But the alternative, letting Malik be sold, marrying Thomas Henderson, living the rest of her life in a CG of her father's making, was unthinkable. Lillian moved to the window, looking out at the night sky. The moon was full, casting silver light over the plantation. In the distance, she could see the slave quarters, a single lamp still burning in one of the windows. Was that where Malik was? Was he in pain? Was he thinking of her? I'm going to fix this, she whispered to the night. Somehow. The next morning, Edward unlocked her door, his face stern but calmer than the day before. Get dressed, he ordered. Thomas will be here by noon. I expect you to be polite and agreeable. Lillian nodded meekly, playing the obedient daughter. Yes, father. Edward studied her face, suspicious of her sudden compliance. I mean it, Lillian. No more of your nonsense. Thomas is a good match, wealthy, respectable. He'll keep you in line. I understand, Lillian said, lowering her eyes. I'll be ready by noon. Satisfied, Ed Ward left, leaving the door unlocked this time. Lillian waited until she heard him go downstairs, then quickly began to prepare. Not for Thomas Henderson's arrival, but for something else entirely. She dressed in her simplest gown, one that wouldn't attract attention. Then she emptied her jewelry box, tucking the few valuable pieces into a small pouch. It wasn't much, but it might be enough to buy passage on a northbound ship or a stagecoach ticket to Philadelphia or Boston. Next, she wrote a short note to Martha, thanking her for her kindness and asking her not to worry. She placed it under her pillow where it wouldn't be found until she was long gone. Lillian's heart was pounding as she moved through the house, forcing herself to act normally when servants passed by. She made her way to her father's study, where she knew he kept cash in a locked drawer. The key was hidden in a book on the shelf, Shakespeare Rhee's collected works, a volume her father never read but kept for appearances. With trembling hands, Lillian unlocked the drawer and took half the money inside, enough to help them get away, but not so much that her father would immediately notice it missing. She added it to her pouch and slipped back upstairs, unnoticed. Now came the hard part. Somehow she needed to get a message to Malik. But how? She couldn't risk going to the slave quarters herself, and she didn't know who she could trust with such a dangerous request. As she stood by her window thinking, she saw a small figure crossing the yard. Elijah, the young boy who shared a cabin with Malik. He was carrying a basket of laundry toward the washhouse. Lillian hurried downstairs and out the back door, intercepting Elijah at the washhouse. Elijah, she said softly, making sure no one else was within earshot. I need your help. The boy looked up at Hind. Ursa, his eyes wary. Yes, Miss Rousseau. I need you to take a message to Malik, Lillian said, pressing a folded piece of paper into his hand. But you can't let anyone see you give it to him, do you understand? It's very important. Elijah hesitated, clearly afraid. I don't know, miss. If Master Edward found out, he won't, Lillian assured him, slipping a small coin into his palm alongside the note. Please, Elijah. It's important. The boy looked at the coin, then back at Lillian's face. Something in her expression must have convinced him, because he nodded slightly and tucked the note into his shirt. "Thank you," Lillian breathed. "Remember, don't let anyone see." Elijah nodded again and continued on his way, the note safely hidden. Lillian returned to the house, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. She had done it. The plan was in motion. The note was simple. "Tonight, midnight, the old sycamore tree beyond the north field. I can help you escape. Trust me." Now all she could do was wait and pray that Malik would be able to meet her, that he would trust her enough to take this risk. Thomas Henderson arrived promptly at noon, dressed in his finest suit, his face flushed with pleasure at the prospect of an earlier wedding date. Lillian greeted him with a forced smile, playing the shy bride-to-be while her mind was miles away, focused on the night to come. "You look lovely, my dear," Thomas said, kissing her hand a little too lingeringly, despite all the recent troubles. "Thank you," Lillian murmured, withdrawing her hand as soon as politeness allowed. "It's kind of you to come so quickly." "How could I stay away when Edward wrote of your situation?" Thomas replied, his eyes traveling over her possessively. "The sooner we're married, the better, I think." Edward clapped Thomas on the shoulder. "My thoughts exactly. Nothing like a firm hand to guide a wayward girl." The two men laughed, sharing a look that made Lillian's skin crawl. They sat down to lunch, discussing wedding plans, as if her opinion didn't matter at all. Because it didn't. She was just a piece of property being transferred from father to husband. "I was thinking August 15th, Edward was saying. "The repairs to the East Wing should be completed by then. Nothing grand, mind you, but respectable enough." "Perfect," Thomas agreed, helping himself to more wine. "That gives me time to prepare the house for my bride." He smiled at Lillian, who forced herself to smile back. "Will we be living at your plantation?" she asked, hoping she sounded merely curious rather than desperate for information. "For the first year or so," Thomas replied. "Then, once the merger of our properties is complete, we'll build a new house right on the boundary line, bigger than either of our current homes, a dynasty in the making." He raised his glass in a toast and Edward joined him enthusiastically. Lillian nodded, her face a careful mask while her insides twisted with revulsion. A dynasty. Children with this man who looked at her like she was a prized mare. A lifetime of submission and silence. Never. She would die first. The afternoon dragged on endlessly. Thomas insisted on a tour of the property, including the burned remains of the main house, which he examined with a builder's eye, making notes about the reconstruction. "Good bones," he commented, poking at a charred beam. "We can salvage more than I expected." As they walked back toward the guest house, they passed the slave quarters. Lillian's eyes searched the area, hoping for a glimpse of Malik, but he was nowhere to be seen. "I hear you had some trouble with one of your slaves," Thomas said casually to Edward, "the one who got above himself with Lillian." Edward's face darkened. "Yes, he's being sold. I've already contacted Johnston in Charleston. He buys for the sugar plantations down south." Lillian's blood ran cold. The sugar plantate. Irons were notorious. Places where slaves were worked to death in the brutal heat, where few survived more than a few years. "A fitting punishment," Thomas nodded approvingly. "Can't have them getting ideas." "Precisely," Edward agreed. "He leaves tomorrow morning. Johnston is sending men to collect him." Tomorrow morning? Lillian felt a wave of panic. There was no time to lose. Tonight might be their only chance. By the time Thomas finally left, with many injuring kisses to her hand and cheek, Lillian was nearly sick with anxiety. The sun was already setting, and she had so much to prepare before midnight. Her father, pleased with how well the visit had gone, retired to his study with a bottle of whiskey, leaving Lillian to her own devices. She went upstairs, ostensibly to rest, but in reality to make final preparations. She changed into a dark dress that wouldn't show in the night, and sturdy boots for walking. She tied her money and jewelry pouch around her waist, hidden under her skirts. Then she packed a small bundle of essentials, a change of clothes, a warm shawl, a small knife she had taken from the kitchen. As darkness fell, Lillian sat by her window, watching the lights go out one by one across the plantation. The house grew quiet. From her father's study came the sound of snoring. He had drunk himself to sleep again. It was time. Moving silently, Lillian crept downstairs and out the back door. The night was warm, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine. A chorus of cicadas sang in the trees, covering the sound of her footsteps as she made her way across the property, keeping to the shadows. The old sycamore tree stood like a giant sentinel at the edge of the north field, its massive trunk and spreading branches visible in the moonlight. Lillian's heart pounded as she approached, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of Malik. What if he hadn't gotten her message? What if he was too badly injured to come, or worse, what if he had decided not to trust her? She reached the tree and pressed her back against the rough bark, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The night was quiet except for the chirping of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. "Malik," she whispered into the darkness. "Are you here?" For a long moment there was nothing. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, a voice from the shadows. "I'm here." Malik stepped out from behind the tree, his face half hidden in darkness. Even in the dim light, Lillian could see that he moved stiffly, favoring his right side where the whip had cut deepest. "You came," she breathed, relief washing over her. "Your note said to trust you," Malik replied simply. "So I'm here." Lillian reached out impulsively, wanting to touch him to make sure he was real, but she stopped herself, remembering his injuries. "How badly are you hurt?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. Malik shrugged slightly, then winced at the movement. "I've had worse." "I'm so sorry," Lillian whispered, tears springing to her eyes. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't—" "It's not your fault," Malik cut her off firmly. "It's the way things are. You didn't create this world." "But I made it worse for you," Lillian insisted. "And now my father plans to sell you to the sugar plantations. Tomorrow." Malik's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of fear quickly suppressed. "That's why I asked you to meet me," Lillian continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "We have to get you away from here tonight. I have money. Enough for passage north. You could go to Canada, like you said, be free." Malik stared at her, his face unreadable in the moonlight. "You would help me escape?" "Yes," Lillian said firmly. "I can't let them send you south. I can't let them hurt you anymore." "Why?" Malik asked, his voice low and intense. "Why would you risk everything for me?" Lillian looked up at him, suddenly unable to hide her feelings. "Because when I'm with you, I feel real. Like I matter as a person, not just as someone's daughter or someone's fiancé. Because you make me see things differently, see myself differently." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "And because I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Malik's eyes widened, and for a moment he seemed at a loss for words. "Lillian," he finally said, her name soft on his lips. "This is madness. You know that, don't you? You have a life here, security, safety." "A cage," Lillian corrected him. "That's what you called it, and you were right. I don't want that life anymore. I don't want to marry Thomas Henderson and be just another piece of property." She moved closer to him, close enough to feel the warmth of his body. "Come with me," she urged. "Tonight, we can both be free." Malik shook his head slowly. "It's not that simple. If we're caught—" "We won't be," Lillian interrupted. "I have it all planned out. There's a wagon leaving for Charleston at dawn, supplies for the rebuilding. We can hide in Teehee back under the canvas. Once we reach the city, we'll find passage on a ship heading north." "And then what?" Malik asked. "Even if we make it north, even if we reach Canada, what then? A white woman and a black man?" "The world won't accept that, Lillian, not even in the north." "I don't care what the world accepts," Lillian said fiercely. "I care about being free, both of us, together or apart, but free." Malik studied her face, searching for doubt or hesitation. Finding none, he slowly reached out and touched her cheek, his bandaged hand gentle against her skin. "You would give up everything?" he asked softly. "Your home, your family, your position?" "What position?" Lillian laughed bitterly. "Being sold from my father to my husband, that's not a position I want to keep." Malik's expression softened, and something like hope flickered in his eyes. "You're the bravest person I've ever known," he said quietly. Lillian leaned into his touch, her heart pounding. "Is that a yes? Will you come with me?" For a moment, Malik didn't answer. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes, but not for my sake alone, for yours too. I won't leave you here to face your father's wrath when he discovers you helped me escape." Relief and joy surged through Lillian. She had been afraid he would refuse, would insist she stay behind where it was safe. "We need to hurry," she said, suddenly all business. "The wagon leaves at first light. We need to be hidden before the drivers arrive." Malik nodded, his face serious again. "I need to get something first from my cabin." "Is it safe?" Lillian asked worriedly. "What if someone sees you?" "Everyone's asleep," Malik assured her, "and I need this. It's all I have left of my mother." Lillian nodded in understanding. "I'll wait for you at the supply shed near the wagon. Be careful." Malik hesitated. Tehen leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a brief, gentle kiss. "I will," he promised. Before Lillian could recover from her surprise, he was gone, slipping silently into the darkness toward the slave quarters. Lillian touched her lips, her heart racing from that simple kiss. Then she gathered her skirts and hurried toward the supply shed, staying in the shadows and moving as quietly as possible. The shed was dark and smelled of leather and wood. The wagon stood ready, loaded with lumber and other building supplies, covered with a heavy canvas tarp. Lillian slipped inside and found a space between two stacks of lumber where they could hide. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as she waited for Malik. Every sound made her jump, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the creak of the shed's wooden walls, the distant barking of a dog. What if he had been caught? What if he had changed his mind? What if this whole plan was foolish from the start? Just as panic began to rise in her throat, the shed door opened slightly and Malik slipped inside. Lillian sagged with relief. "You made it," she whispered. Malik nodded, moving to her side. "Everyone's still asleep. No one saw me. Did you get what you needed?" Malik opened his hand, revealing a small carved wooden bird. "My mother made this," he said softly. "It's all I have left of her." Lillian touched the carving gently. "It's beautiful." "She said birds are never truly caged," Malik explained. "Even if their bodies are trapped, their spirits can always fly free." The simple words brought tears to Lillian's eyes. "We're going to fly free too," she promised. "Both of us." They settled into their hiding place, arranging the canvas to conceal them completely while still allowing them to breathe. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but Lillian didn't care. For the first time in her life, she felt truly alive, truly purposeful. "Try to rest," Malik whispered. "It will be a long journey." Lillian nodded, leaning cautiously against his uninjured side. Malik stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, his arm coming around her shoulders in a protective gesture that made her feel safer than she ever had before. Despite the discomfort and the anxiety, Lillian must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, voices were approaching the shed. "Wake up," Malik whispered urgently. "They're coming." Lillian blinked awake, instantly alert. The first grey light of dawn was filtering through the cracks in the shed walls. The drivers had arrived to hitch up the wagon. "Stay absolutely still," Malik breathed in her ear. "Not a sound." Lillian nodded, holding her breath as the shed door opened and two men entered, talking loudly. "Early start today," one of them grumbled. "Mr. Rousseau wants these supplies at the house before noon." "Better than working the fields," the other replied. "At least we get to sit on our backsides for the ride." They moved around the wagon, checking the load, adjusting the canvas. One of them came so close to their hiding place that Lillian could smell the tobacco on his breath. She pressed herself against Malik, terrified of discovery. But the men didn't notice anything amiss. They hitched up the horses and climbed onto the driver's bench, and soon the wagon was rolling out of the shed and down the road toward Charleston. The journey was agonizing. Every bump in the road jostled them painfully, and the space under the canvas grew hot as the sun rose higher. Malik's wounds must have been causing him terrible pain, but he never complained, never made a sound that might give them away. Twice the wagon stopped, once at a checkpoint where the drivers had to show their tray. Vel papers, and once at a roadside tavern where they stopped for a meal. Each time, Lillian and Malik held their breath, praying they wouldn't be discovered. By the time they reached Charleston, it was late afternoon. The wagon rattled through the busy streets, finally coming to a stop at a lumberyard near the harbor. They could hear the drivers jumping down, talking with someone about unloading the supplies. "Now's our chance," Malik whispered. "While they are distracted, we need to slip away before they start unloading." Lillian nodded, her limbs stiff and aching from the long journey. Carefully, they peeled back a corner of the canvas and peered out. The drivers were inside a small office, their backs to the wagon. "Now," Malik said, and they slipped out, ducking quickly behind a stack of crates. The harbor was bustling with activity, ships being loaded and unloaded, sailors and merchants haggling over goodees, passengers coming and going. No one paid any attention to two more people in the crowd. "We need to find a ship heading north," Lillian said, adjusting her shawl to cover her distinctive blonde hair. "And quickly, before my father realizes we're gone and sends someone after us." Malik nodded, keeping his head down and his injured back straight despite the pain. "We should split up," he suggested. "I'll attract less attention alone, and so will you. Meet me back here in 1 hour." Lillian's heart clenched at the thought of being separated from him, even briefly. What if something happens? What if you're caught? "I won't be," Malik promised. 1 hour. If I'm not back, don't wait for me. Find a ship and go." "I'm not leaving without you," Lillian said firmly. Malik touched her face gently. "Yes, you will, if necessary, promise me." Lillian wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in his eyes. 1 hour, she agreed reluctantly. "Be careful." "You too," Malik said, and then he was gone, moving through the crowd with a confidence that belied his status as a runaway slave. Lillian took a deep breath and headed in the opposite direction toward the harbormaster's office where ship schedules would be posted. She kept her head down, trying to look inconspicuous, just another young woman on an errand. The harbormaster's office was small and cramped, with a balding, red-faced man behind the desk who barely looked up when she entered. "Excuse me," Lillian said, trying to sound confident. "I'm looking for passage north, to Philadelphia or New York. Which ships are sailing soon?" The harbormaster squinted at a ledger in front of him. "The Osprey is sailing for Philadelphia tomorrow morning. The Northern Star leaves for New York in 3 days." "Tomorrow is perfect," Lillian said, relieved. "How much for passage E?" The harbormaster named a price that was steep but not impossible with the money she had taken from her father's desk. Lillian paid for 2 tickets, giving false names, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. The harbormaster didn't question it, just pocketed the money and handed her the tickets. "Boarding starts at dawn," he told her. "Don't be late. Captain doesn't wait for stragglers." "We'll be there," Lillian promised, tucking the tickets safely into her pouch. As Sheikh turned to leave, her heart nearly stopped. There on the wall behind the harbormaster's desk was a newly posted notice. "Runaway slaves, $500 reward below," were crude sketches of 2 people, a man and a woman. The man's description matched Malik perfectly, but the woman wasn't Lillian. It was Sarah, her maid. Lillian stared at the notice in confusion. Why would her father think Malik had run away with Sarah? Then understanding dawned. He didn't know she was gone yet. He assumed Malik had escaped with help from another slave, not his daughter. "Something wrong, miss?" the harbormaster asked, noticing her distraction. "No," Lillian said quickly. "Nothing at all. Thank you for your help." She hurried out, her mind racing. This was both good and bad news. Good because it meant they weren't looking for her specifically, but bad because it meant they were already searching for Malik. Lillian made her way back to the air meeting spot, constantly checking over her shoulder for any sign of pursuit. The hour wasn't up yet, but her nerves couldn't take the waiting. She needed to see Malik, to know he was safe. To her relief, he was already there, standing in the shadow of a tall stack of crates, his expression tense but controlled. "Did you find anything?" he asked as soon as she reached him. "Yes," Lillian replied, showing him the tickets. "The Osprey sails for Philadelphia tomorrow morning. But Malik, there are already notices. Posted about you. My father thinks you ran away with Sarah." Malik's brow furrowed. "Sarah? Why would he think that?" "I don't know," Lillian admitted. "But it means they're already looking for you. We need to find somewhere to hide until morning." Malik nodded thoughtfully. I know a place. There's a church on the edge of town where the minister helps runaway slaves. He's part of the Underground Railroad. He can hide us for the night." "How do you know about this?" Lillian asked, surprised. "Slaves talk," Malik said simply. "We share information, pass it along. It's how we survive." Lillian nodded, a new respect filling her. There was so much she didn't know about his world, so much she had been blind to. They made their way through the busy streets, keeping to side alleys when possible, avoiding eye contact with passers-by. As the sun began to set, they reached a small, unassuming church on the outskirts of town. Malik knocked on a side door in a specific pattern. 3 quick knocks, a pause, then 2 more. After a moment, the door opened a crack, and an elderly black man peered out. "We seek shelter," Malik said softly. "The bird flies north." It seemed to be some kind of code, because the old man's suspicious expression immediately softened. He opened the door wider, ushering them inside. "Quickly," he said, "there are patrols out tonight." The interior of the church was dimly lit and smelled of candle wax and old wood. The old man led them through the sanctuary and down a narrow staircase to a hidden cellar beneath the church. "You can stay here tonight," he told them, lighting an oil lamp that cast long shadows on the walls. "There's food and water, clean bandages too if you need them." He glanced at Malik's stiff posture, clearly recognizing the signs of a recent whipping. "Thank you," Lillian said sincerely. "We're very grateful." The old man looked at her curiously. "It's not often we see white folks helping with the escape," he commented, "especially not young ladies like yourself." Lillian glanced at Malik, unsure how to explain their situation. "She's with me," Malik said simply, and something in his tone made the old man raise his eyebrows in surprise. "I see," he said, studying them both with new interest. "Well, that's your business, not mine. I just help folks get where they're going. Speaking of which, where are you headed?" "Philadelphia," Lillian answered. "We have passage on the Osprey tomorrow morning." The old man nodded approvingly. "Good choice. Captain's sympathetic to the cause, but you'll need to be careful. The docks will be watched. There's been an increase in runaways lately and the slave catchers are out in force." "We'll be careful," Malik promised. "See that you are," the old Mayen said. "I'll come for you before dawn. Try to get some rest." After he left, Lillian and Malik were alone in the small cellar. It was sparsely furnished, just a couple of cots, a small table with a pitcher of water and some bread and cheese, and a few blankets. "You should eat something," Malik said, breaking the silence. "It's been a long day." Lillian nodded, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. They sat together at the small table, sharing the simple meal, both lost in their own thoughts. "Are you scared?" Lillian asked finally, looking up at Malik's face in the lamplight. He considered the question honestly. "Yes," he admitted, "but not of what's ahead. I'm scared of what happens if we fail." Lillian understood perfectly. If they were caught, Malik would face a terrible punishment, possibly even death, and she would be disgraced, forced to return to her father's house in shame, to a fate that now seemed worse than any hardship they might face as fugitives. "We won't fail," she said with more confidence than she felt. "Tomorrow we'll be on that ship, sailing north, and then—" She trailed off, realizing they hadn't really discussed what would happen after they reached Philadelphia. "And then we'll figure it out," Malik finished for her. "One day at a time." Lillian smiled, grateful for his steadiness, his quiet strength. "One day at a time," she agreed. After they had eaten, Lillian insisted on changing the bandages on Malik's back. The old man had left clean cloths and a jar of salve that smelled strongly of herbs. "This will hurt," she warned as she gently peeled away the old bandages. Malik didn't flinch, though she knew it must be agonizing. The wounds were angry red lines across his back, some still oozing slightly where the whip had cut deepest. "I'm so sorry," Lillian whispered as she worked clear, "ning the wounds as gently as possible." "Don't be," Malik said, his voice steady despite the pain. "This isn't your fault." "But if I hadn't asked you to meet me, if you hadn't asked me to meet you," Malik interrupted, "I would still be a slave, with no hope of freedom, and you would be marrying Thomas Henderson next month." He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. I don't regret anything, Lillian. Not one moment. Lillian looked into his eyes, seeing the truth there. Despite everything, the pain, the danger, the uncertain future, he didn't regret their connection. Neither did she. I've been thinking, she said, finishing the bandaging. When we reach Philadelphia, we should go further. To Canada, like you said. It's safer there. Slave catchers can't cross the border. Malik nodded. That's a good plan, but it's a long journey from Philadelphia to Canada. We'll need money, supplies. I have some Monet left, Lillian said, and jewelry we can sell. It should be enough to get us there. And then, Malik asked softly, what happens when we reach Canada? Lillian knew what he was really asking. What happened to them? What would their relationship be in this new, free world? I don't know, she admitted honestly. I only know that I want to be with you. The rest we can figure out together. Malik's expression softened and he reached out to touch her facey. You're extraordinary, he said. I've never met anyone like you. Lillian leaned into his touch, her heart full. And I've never met anyone like you. You make me brave. You were always brave, Malik corrected her. You just didn't know it yet. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Lillian didn't want to. She met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deeper, more urgenty. It was everything Lillian had never known she wanted, tender and passionate and real, in a way nothing in her life had ever been before. When they finally pulled apart, she was breathless, her heart pounding. We should try to rest, Malik said, his voice rough with emotion. Tomorrow will be challenging. Lillian nodded, reluctantly moving away from him. They settled on the cots, which were narrow but surprisingly comfortable after the long day's journey. Good night, Lillian, Malik said softly. Good night, she replied, though she doubted she would sleep. Her mind was too full, her heart too. They were so close to freedom, and yet still in such danger. Despite her anxiety, exhaustion eventually claimed her, and Lillian fell into a deep sleep. She was awakened by a gentle hand on her shoulder. It's time, the old man whispered. Dawn is coming. Lillian sat up, momentarily disoriented in the dim light of the cellar. Then she remembered the escape, the church, the ship that would take them north. Malik was already awake, sitting on the edge of his cot, his expression focused and alert despite the early hour. There's something you should know, the old man said as they gathered their few belongings. Word came in late last night. There's a man at the docks asking questions, showing a sketch, tall man with a grey beard. Lillian's blood ran cold. My father R, she whispered. He's here. The old man looked at her sharply. Your father? I thought you were helping this man escape. I am, Lillian said firmly. I'm escaping too, from an arranged marriage, from a life I don't want. The old man studied her face, then nodded slowly. Love makes people do brave things, he said with a glance at Malik. Foolish things too sometimes, but always brave. How can we get to the ship if my father is watching the dock-s? Lillian asked, fear rising in her throat. There's another way, the old man said. A small boat that can take you out to the Osprey once it's in the harbor, ready to sail. But it's risky. If you're seen, we'll take the risk, Malik said firmly. We've come too far to turn back now. The old man nodded. Follow me then, and may God go with you both. He led them up the cellar stairs and through the empty church. Outside, the sky was just beginning to lighten, the stars fading one by one. The streets were mostly empty at this early hour, but they still moved cautiously, keeping to the shadows. The old man took them down narrow alleys and back streets, avoiding the main roads that led to the harbor. Finally, they reached a small, deserted dock on the far side of the harbor. Wait here, the old man instructed, pointing to a weathered shed near the water's edge. My friend Josiah will come with his bow. At just after sunrise, he'll take you out to the Osprey. How will we recognize him? Lillian asked. He'll be alone, in a small fishing boat with a blue patch on the sail, the old man replied. He'll whistle Amazing Grace as a signal. Thank you, Malik said, gripping the old man's hand, for everything. Just get to freedom, the old man said. Live well. That's thanks enough. With that, he disappeared back the way they had come, leaving Lillian, and Malik alone at the small dock. They took shelter in the shed, which smelled strongly of fish and tar. Through a crack in the wall, they could see the harbor, where ships were beginning to stir with early morning activity. Somewhere out there was the Osprey, their passage to a new life. "Do you think your father knows I'm with you?" Malik asked quietly. Lillian shook her head. "I don't think so. The notice I saw only mentioned you and Sarah. He probably thinks I'm still locked in my room." "He'll know soon enough," Malik said grimly. "When they discover you're gone." Lillian squeezed his hand. "By then we'll be far away, on our way to Philadelphia." They fell silent, watching the sky lighten and the harbor come to life. Fishermen began to appear with their nets, seagulls swooped and called, and sailors moved about the decks of the larger ships. And then, on the main dock, Lillian spotted a familiar figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick grey beard. Her father. He was talking to a harbor official, gesturing emphatically. Even from a distance, she could see the anger in his stance, the rigid set of his shoulders. "He's here," she whispered, shrinking back from the crack in the wall. "At the main dock." Malik looked through the crack, his expression hardening when he saw Edward Rousseau. "He won't find us," he said with quiet determination. "We're almost free, Lillian. Almost there." The minutes crawled by, the sun rising higher, casting long golden rays across the water. Where was Josiah with his boat? Had something gone wrong? Just as Lillian was beginning to lose hope, they heard it, a soft whistling of "Amazing Grace" coming from the water. They peered out cautiously. A small fishing boat with a patched blue sail was approaching the dock, a solitary figure at the tiller. "Josiah." "That's him," Malik Bowachech whispered. "Come on." They slipped out of the shed and hurried to the edge of the dock. Josiah, a weathered man with kind eyes, helped them into the boat without a word. "Thank you for helping us," Lillian said as they settled onto the narrow bench. Josiah nodded. "Just doing what's right," he said simply. He turned the boat away from the dock and began to row, keeping close to the shoreline where they would be less visible. From this vantage point, they could see the harbor more clearly. The Osprey was indeed preparing to sail, its decks bustling with activity. But they could also see more of the main dock, including Edward Rousseau, who was now accompanied by several men who looked like hired muscle. "They're searching the ships," Malik observed grimly, "checking passengers as they board." Lillian's heart sank. How would they get past them? Even if Josiah got them to the Osprey, they would have to board with the other passengers, right under her father's watchful eye. Josiah, seeing their concern, spoke up. "Don't worry. We won't be going to the passenger gangway. I know the first mate. He'll let you aboard through the cargo hold. It's how we usually get folks like you onto friendly ships." Relief washed over Lillian. "Thank you," she said again, feeling that the words were inadequate for the risks these strangers were taking on their behalf. Josiah guided the E-boat in a wide arc around the harbor, approaching the Osprey from the seaward side, where they would be less likely to be spotted from the dock. As they drew closer, Lillian could see a man watching for them from the lower deck, near where cargo was being loaded. "That's Martin, the first mate," Josiah explained. "He'll get you aboard safely." The Osprey was a handsome ship, three-masted and solid-looking. Lillian tried to imagine herself and Malik aboard sailing north toward freedom, and felt a surge of hope so strong it brought tears to her eyes. Josiah brought the small boat alongside the Osprey, where a rope ladder had been discreetly lowered. "You go first," Malik told Lillian. "I'll be right behind you." Lillian nodded and gripped the ladder. It swayed alarmingly as she began to climb, but she forced herself to keep going, one rung at a time, not looking down at the water below. At the top, Martin T., her first mate, helped her onto the deck with a strong hand. "Hurry," he urged. "We're casting off soon." Lillian turned to watch Malik climbing after her. He was almost to the top, his face tight with the pain his injured back must be causing him, when a shout came from across the harbor. "There, on the Osprey!" Lillian's blood ran cold. Someone had spotted them. She looked toward the dock and saw her father pointing in their direction, his face contorted with rage, even at this distance. "Hurry!" she called to Malik, reaching down to help him the last few feet. but it was too late. Even as Malik reached the deck, a small boat was launching from the main dock, several men piling in, Edward Rousseau among them. "They're coming," Martin said grimly. "We need to cast off now, or none of us will be sailing today." He hurried away, shouting orders to the crew. The ship came alive with activity, ropes being untied, sails unfurling, anchors being raised. But the small boat was moving fast, propelled by 4 strong rowers. It would reach them before they could get underway. "This way," Martin said, returning to hurry them below decks. "We'll hide you in the cargo hold." They followed him down a narrow ladder into the dimly lit hold, where crates and barrels were stacked in neat rows. Martin led them to the back, where a small space had been created behind some empty barrels. "Stay here," he instructed. "Don't make a sound, no matter what you hear. I'll come for you when it's safe." With that, he was gone, climbing back up to the deck where the sounds of activity were growing more frantic. Lillian and Malik huddled together in their hiding place, hearts pounding. Above them they could hear shouting, the sound of boots on the deck, the creaking of the ship as it began to move. And then, the most terrifying sound of all, Edward Rousseau's voice, loud and furious. "I know they're aboard this ship, my daughter and my slave. I demand you search every inch of this vessel." "We're casting off, sir," came another voice, the captain presumably. "You'll have to disembark immediately." "I'm not going anywhere until I find them," Edward roared. "Do you know who I am? I'll have this ship seized, I'll have your license revoked." There was more shouting, the sound of a scuffle. Lillian pressed closer to Malik, terrified that at any moment someone would find their hiding place. The ship was definitely moving now, the gentle rocking more pronounced. Had Edward been forced to leave? Or was he still aboard searching for them? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The sounds above grew more distant, the regular rhythm of a ship underway replacing the chaos of departure. Still, they didn't dare move, didn't dare hope that they were Toryuli safe. Finally, the hatch opened and footsteps descended the ladder. Lillian held her breath, gripping Malik's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. "It's safe now," Martin's voice called softly. "You can come out." They emerged cautiously from their hiding place. Martin was standing at the foot of the ladder, a relieved expression on his face. "Your father was forced to leave the ship," he told them. "He was causing such a scene that the harbor master intervened. We're well underway now, headed out to sea." Lillian sagged against Malik in relief. "He didn't leave anyone aboard to search for us?" "He tried," Martin said with a grim smile, "but the captain wouldn't allow it. He doesn't take kindly to threats, our captain." "So we're safe?" Malik asked, his arm steady around Lillian's waist. "For now," Martin nodded. "We're bound for Philadelphia, 3 days sailing if the weather holds. I've arranged a small cabin for you both. It's not much, but it's private." "Thank you," Lillian said fervently. "We can't thank you enough." Martin shrugged. "The captain believes in freedom, same as I do. He's been helping folks like you for years." He looked between them curiously. "Though I admit, you're an unusual pair." Lillian lifted her chin. "We're just 2 people who want to be free," she said. "To live our own lives, make our own choices." Martin nodded thoughtfully. "Fair enough. Come on, I'll show you to your cabin." Martin led them up a different ladder and through a narrow corridor to a small cabin near the stern of the ship. It was simple, just a narrow bed, a small table bolted to the floor, and a porthole that let in a circle of golden morning light. "It's not much," Martin apologized, "but it's private. No one will bother you here." "It's perfect," Lillian assured him. After everything they'd been through, this small, safe space felt like a palace. "I'll bring you some food later," Martin promised. "For now, try to rest. We're headed out to open sea and then it's a straight course to Philadelphia." After he left, Lillian sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of what they had done. They had escaped. They were on their way north, to freedom. And yet, they were still in danger. Her father wouldn't give up easily. "Do you think he'll follow us to Philadelphia?" she asked Malik, who was standing by the porthole, watching the coastline of Charleston grow smaller in the distance. "Probably," Malik said honestly. "He's a proud man. He won't accept defeat easily. Lillian nodded, having expected that answer. Then we'll need to be careful when we arrive. Maybe we shouldn't stay in Philadelphia at all. We could continue on to New York or straight to Canada. Malik turned to face her, his expression serious. Lillian, are you sure about this? About all of it? It's not too late. When we reach Philadelphia, you could go back. Tell your father I forced you to come with me. He would believe that. Lillian stared at him in disbelief. Go back? To what? To marry Thomas Henderson? To live the rest of my life as property, passed from my father to my husband? She shook her head firmly. No, I've made my choice, Malik. I choose freedom. I choose you. The intensity in her voice must have convinced him, because Malik's expression softened. He crossed the small cabin and sat beside her on the bed, taking her hands in his. It won't be easy, he warned. Even in the North, there's prejudice. A white woman and a black man, people will talk, stare. Some will be cruel. Let them, Lillian said defiantly. What do I care what St. Rangers think? All my life I've lived by other people's rules, other people's expectations, not anymore. Malik smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his face. You really are the bravest person I've ever known. Lillian laughed softly. I don't feel brave, just determined. That's the best kind of bravery, Malik said, leaning forward to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. The next 3 days passed in a dreamlike blur. True to his word, Martin brought them food and fresh water, and occasionally news from above deck. The weather was good, the sailing smooth. No ships were following them. They were on schedule to reach Philadelphia the day after tomorrow. For Lillian and Malik, the small cabin became a world unto itself, a safe haven where they could talk freely, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams of their future. Lillian learned more about Malik's childhood, about the mother who had to ut him to read in secret, about his sisters who had been sold away when he was 12. In turn, she told him about her own mother, who had died when Lillian was just 8 years old, about growing up with only her stern father for company, learning to be quiet and obedient and decorative, about the emptiness she had always felt, the sense that there must be more to life than the narrow role she had been assigned. I never felt truly alive until I met you, she confessed one night, lying beside him in the narrow bed, their fingers intertwined. It's like I was sleepwalking through my life and you woke me up. Malik's face was gentle in the dim light of the oil lamp. You woke yourself up, he corrected her. You just needed someone to show you it was possible. On the morning of the third day, Martin knocked on their cabin door with excitement in his voice. We'll be arriving in Philadelphia by sunset, H.E. told them. The captain wants to see you both. They followed Martin to the captain's cabin, a spacious room at the stern of the ship with windows that looked out over the wake. Captain Reynolds was a tall, lean man with a weathered face and kind eyes. He greeted them with a warm handshake. Martin has told me your story, he said, gesturing for them to sit. It's an unusual one, to say the least. We are very grateful for your help, Captain, Lillian said sincerely. We know you took a risk for us. Captain Reynolds waved away her thanks. I've been helping people find freedom for 20 years, he said simply. It's the right thing to do, but I must warn you, Philadelphia may not be safe for you. Word travels fast in shipping circles. If your father has connections there, he may already have people watching for your arrival. Lillian and Malik exchanged worried glances. What do you suggest? Malik asked. I have friends in the abolitionist movement, Captain Reynolds replied. They can help you get further north, to Boston perhaps, or even to Canada. It's much safer across the border. Canada is where we were hoping to go, Lillian agreed eagerly, but we don't know how to get there from Philadelphia. My friends can arrange that, the captain assured them. There's a network, what some call the Underground Railroad. Safe houses, trusted guides. They can get you to Canada. Hope surged in Lillian's chest. That would be wonderful. But how do we find these friends of yours? You don't, Captain Reynolds said with a small smile. They'll find you. When we dock, stay aboard until nightfall. I'll send someone to guide you to a safe house. From there, the network will take over. True to the captain's word, they docked in Philadelphia just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lillian and Malik remained in their cabin, hearts pounding with anxiety and anticipation. They were so close to freedom now, and yet still in danger. Just after dark, there was a soft knock at their door. Martin stood there with a slender black woman in a simple grey dress. "This is Harriet," Martin introduced her. "She'll take you to the safe house." Harriet nodded to them, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "We need to hurry," she said. "Follow me and stay close." They said goodbye to Martin, thanking him once more for his help. Then they followed Harriet down the gangplank and onto the Philadelphia docks, which were still busy despite the late hour. "Keep your heads down," Harriet instructed in a low voice. "Don't make eye contact with anyone." They moved quickly through the crowded dockyard, Harriet leading the way with confident steps. Lillian kept close to Malik, her hand in his, her heart racing. With every shadow, every unexpected noise. Philadelphia was far larger and busier than Lillian had imagined. The streets were packed with people, carriages, and carts, even at this hour. Lights blazed from shop windows, and the air was thick with the smells of cooking food, horses, and coal smoke. Harriet led them away from the main thoroughfares, down narrower streets where the crowds thinned and the buildings grew shabbier. Finally, she stopped before a small, nondescript house with a single candle burning in the window. "This is it," she said, knocking in a specific pattern. 2 quick knocks, a pause, then 3 more. The door opened to reveal an elderly white man with a shock of white hair and a kind face. "Come in quickly," he urged. "You're expected." Inside, the house was simple but clean, with a fire burning in the hearth and the smell of fresh bread in the air. The old man introduced himself as Jose P.H. and his wife as Mary. They were Quakers, he explained, and had been helping fugitive slaves for over 30 years. "So you're safe here for tonight," Joseph assured them, showing them to a small bedroom at the back of the house. "Tomorrow we'll arrange the next leg of your journey." That night, lying in yet another strange bed in yet another strange place, Lillian found herself trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and fear. "What if my father finds us?" she whispered to Malik in the darkness. "What if we're caught?" Malik's arms tightened around her. "We won't be," he promised. "These people know what they're doing. They've been helping fugitives escape for years." Lillian tried to take comfort in his words, but the reality of their situation weighed heavily on her. They were fugitives now, both of them. Running not just from her father, but from the law itself, which said that Malik was property and she was helping to steal that property. "I'm scared," she admitted in a small voice. "I know," Malik said softly. "So am I. But we're together. Whatever happens, we face it together." The simple promise comforted her more than anything else could have. Lillian closed her eyes and eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep. She was awakened the next morning by urgent voices in the main room of the house. Malik was already up, standing by the door, listening intently. "What is it?" Lillian asked, immediately alert. "Trouble," Malik said grimly. "Someone's been asking about us at the docks, showing sketches." Fear gripped Lillian's heart. "My father?" "No, but someone working for him. Joseph says we need to leave Philadelphia immediately. It's not safe." Lillian quickly dressed and joined Malik in the main room, where Joseph and Mary were in deep conversation with another man, tall, well-dressed, with an air of quiet authority. "Ah, here they are," Joseph said when he noticed them. "Frederick, these are the 2 I was telling you about, Lillian and Malik." Frederick stepped forward, extending his hand first to Malik, then to Lillian. "Joseph has explained your situation," he said. "I'm here to help you get to the next safe house." "Is it far?" Lillian asked anxiously. "About 20 miles north," Frederick replied. "We'll travel by wagon, hidden under bags of grain. It's not comfortable, but it's safe." "When do we leave?" Malik asked. "Now," Frederick said firmly. "There's no time to waste. Slave catchers are already at the docks and they'll be working their way through the city soon." There was no time even for breakfast. Mary hastily packed some bread and cheese for them to eat on the journey, and then they were hurrying out the back door to where a large wagon waited, already loaded with burlap sacks. "Climb in here," Frederick instructed, showing them a hollow space he had created among the sacks. "Once I cover you with more bags, don't move or make a sound no matter what happens, understood?" They nodded and climbed into the cramped space. Frederick arranged more grain sacks around and over them until they were completely hidden, with only small gaps for air. The journey was excruciating. Every bump in the road jolted them painfully, and the weight of the grain Sakex made it hard to breathe. The heat was stifling, and Lillian had to fight against waves of claustrophobia and panic. Through it all, Malik held her hand, his presence a steady anchor. They didn't speak, couldn't risk being heard if the wagon was stopped and searched, but his touch said everything that needed saying. "I'm here. We're together. We'll make it through this." Hours passed. Occasionally they heard Frederick speaking to someone, a toll collector, another driver, once even what sounded like a patrolman asking questions. Each time, Lillian's heart would pound so loudly, she was sure it could be heard outside their hiding place. But Frederick's calm, casual responses never wavered, and the wagon always continued on its way. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the wagon came to a stop. They heard Frederick moving around, and the grain sacks above them were being removed. "We're here," Frederick said, helping them out of their hiding place. Safe and sound, they had arrived at a small farm outside a town called Doylestown. The farmhouse was larger than Joseph and Mary's, with a big red barn and fields of corn stretching into the distance. The family who lived there, the Wilsons, welcomed them warmly. Mrs. Wilson insisted they eat a hot meal and take baths to wash away the dust and sweat of their journey. Mr. Wilson talked with Frederick about the next leg of their trip north. "The plan is to get you to New York City," Frederick explained over dinner. "From there you can take a ship to Boston and then on to Canada. The whole journey might take a few weeks, but each step gets you further from danger." "What about my father?" Lillian asked. "Is there any news of him?" Frederick's expression turned serious. "He's in Philadelphia," he confirmed. "Arrived yesterday on a ship from Charleston. He's offering a substantial reward for information, $1,000 for both of you. That's a lot of money. It means we need to be extra cautious." Lillian's appetite vanished at this news. Her father was so close and so determined to find them. The reward would tempt many people to betray them. "Don't worry," Mrs. Wilson said, noticing her distress. "You're safe here. No one in these parts would turn you in, reward or no reward." Lillian tried to believe her, but fear had to ken root in her heart and wouldn't let go. That night, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, Lillian slipped out of bed and went to the window. The moon was full, casting silver light over the farm. It was so peaceful here, so different from the plantation where she had grown up. Could they ever have a life like this? A small farm of their own, somewhere in Canada perhaps? The door opened quietly behind her, and Malik joined her at the window. "You should be sleeping," he said softly. "I can't," Lillian admitted. "I keep thinking about my father, so close behind us. What if he catches up to us? What if someone betrays us for the reward?" Malik put his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "If that happens, we'll deal with it," he said. "But it won't. These people, Joseph and Mary, Frederick, the Wilsons, they're risking everything to help us. They believe in freedom more than they fear punishment or desire rewards." Lillian leaned into his strength, wishing she could share his confidence. "I just want us to be safe," she whispered, "to stop running, to build a life together." "We will," Malik promised. "In Canada. Just a few more weeks, and we'll be across the border. Free." The next morning, Mr. Wilson informed them that Frederick had gone ahead to arrange the next part of their journey. They would need to stay at the farm for a few days, lying low until it was safe to move on. Those days passed slowly. The Wilsons were kind hosts, including Lillian and Malik in their family routines. Mrs. Wilson taught Lillian how to bake bread and make preserves, while Mr. Wilson showed Malik around the farm, explaining his techniques for growing corn and raising livestock. It was a simple life, but a good one. For the first time, Lillian could imagine a future for herself and Malik, working side by side, building so meeting together, belonging to no one but each other. On the third day, Frederick returned with news. "The route to New York is clear," he told them. "We leave tomorrow at dawn. Another wagon, same arrangement as before." That night, Lillian packed the few belongings they had acquired along the way, a change of clothes provided by the Wilsons, a small Bible that Mary had given her, a knife that Joseph had insisted Malik take for protection. "Are you ready for this?" Malik asked her as they prepared for bed. Lillian nodded. I'm ready for anything as long as we're together. The journey to New York followed the same pattern as before. Hours hidden under grain sacks, every bump and jolt of fresh agony, the constant fear of discovery, a weight heavier than the bags themselves. But they made it, arriving at a small house on the outskirts of the city as night was falling. Their hosts this time were a black family and Ahmed the Johnsons, who welcomed them with the same warmth and kindness they had experienced at every stop along the Underground Railroad. New York was even larger and more intimidating than Philadelphia. From the window of the Johnsons' home, Lillian could see the masts of countless ships in the harbor and the glow of thousands of lights from the city beyond. The ship to Boston leaves in 2 days, Mr. Johnson informed them. Until then, you'll stay here. It's not safe for you to be seen in public. Those 2 days were the longest of Lillian's life. Confined to the small house, with nothing to do but wait and worry, she felt her nerves stretching to the breaking point. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar voice outside, sent her heart racing with fear. Malik tried to keep her spirits up, telling stories of what their life might be like in Canada, planning the farm they would build together. But Lillian could see the strain in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He was just as afraid as she was, just hiding it better. Finally, the night before their ship was to sail, Mr. Johnson returned home with a newspaper. His face was grim as he handed it to Malik. "You should see this," he said. "It was posted all over the docks today." Malik unfolded the paper, Lillian reading over his shoulder. There on the front page was a notice. Reward increased $5,000 for information leading to the return of Lillian Rousseau and her abductor, the slave Malik, last seen in Philadelphia. Contact Edward Rousseau at the Metropolitan Hotel below. The notice were sketches of both of them, crude but recognizable. Lillian's hand flew to her mouth in horror. $5,000, she whispered. That's a fortune. "He's desperate," Malik said, his voice tight, and getting closer. Mr. Johnson nodded soberly. "This changes things. With a reward that high, there will be people looking for you everywhere, especially at the docks. Getting you onto that ship to Boston will be much more dangerous than we thought." "What do we do?" Lillian asked, fear making her voice shake. Mr. Johnson considered for a moment. "We need a different plan, a different route." He turned to his wife. "Send for Reverend Porter. We need his help." Reverend Porter arrived an hour later, a tall, dignified black man with graying hair and a serious expression. He listened carefully as Mr. Johnson explained the situation. "The docks will be watched," the Reverend agreed, "and the reward is high enough to tempt even those who normally support our cause." He thought for a moment, then nodded decisively. "I have an idea. It's risky, but it might work." His plan was bold. Instead of trying to sneak them onto a passenger ship to Boston, he would arrange for them to travel on a private yacht belonging to a wealthy abolitionist. The yacht would sail not to Boston, but directly to Nova Scotia in Canada. It would leave from a small private dock, not the main harbor where security would be tight. "The journey will be longer and rougher," Reverend Porter warned them. "The North Atlantic can be treacherous, but once you reach Nova Scotia, you'll be on British soil, safe." "When can we leave?" Malik asked eagerly. "Tomorrow night," the Reverend replied. "The yacht is being prepared now, but getting you to the dock will be the most dangerous part. Every slave catcher in New York will be looking for you." He explained his plan for that as well. Lillian would be disguised as a young man, her distinctive blonde hair hidden under a cap. Malik would pose as a servant to Reverend Porter, who would drive them to the dock in his own carriage. It was dangerous, but it was their best chance. Lillian and Malik agreed immediately. The next day passed in tense preparation. Mrs. Johnson helped Lillian bind her breasts flat and dressed her in men's clothing. Her hair was tucked up under a cap, and she practiced walking and sitting like a man. "Keep your strides longer," Mrs. Johnson instructed, "and don't swing your hips. Men move from the shoulders, not the waist." Malik, meanwhile, was given a servant's uniform and taught how to act deferential, something that didn't come naturally to him after years of suppressing his true feelings behind a mask of subservience. As evening approached, Reverend Porter arrived with his carriage. "It's time," he said gravely. "Are you ready?" Lillian and Malik exchanged a look. then nodded together. They were ready. They said goodbye to the Johnsons, thanking them for their kindness and courage. Then they climbed into the Reverend's carriage, Malik sitting up front with the Reverend, Lillian inside, slouched in a corner like a bored young gentleman. The streets of New York were still busy despite the late hour. Lillian's heart pounded every time they passed a policeman or a group of rough-looking men who might be slave catchers, but no one paid any attention to the respectable black minister and his companions. They were almost to the P. Rivet dock when disaster struck. A roadblock had been set up ahead, with policemen checking each carriage and wagon. "Looking for fugitives," the Reverend said in a low voice. "This is bad." "What do we do?" Lillian asked, panic rising in her throat. "Stay calm," the Reverend advised. "Let me do the talking. Remember your roles." He drove the carriage forward at an unhurried pace. When they reached the roadblock, a policeman held up his hand for them to stop. "Evening, Reverend," the officer said, recognizing Porter. "Sorry for the inconvenience. We're looking for fugitives, a young woman and a male slave. Substantial reward for their capture." "So I've heard," Reverend Porter replied calmly. "I'm just taking my nephew here to meet a ship." He nodded toward Lillian, who slouched further into her seat, keeping her face in shadow. His first voyage to Europe. Very exciting for the boy. The policeman glanced at Lillian, then at Malik. "And who's this?" he asked, nodding toward Malik. "My manservant," the Reverend replied smoothly. "James has been with my family for 20 years. The policeman studied Malik for a moment, then nodded. "All right, Reverend. You can pass. Have a good evening." "Thank you, officer. God bless you." The carriage rolled through the checkpoint, and Lillian finally allowed herself to breathe again. That had been close. Too close. They are each the private dock without further incident. A sleek yacht was moored there, its sails ready, a small crew busy with final preparations. A tall white man with a captain's hat approached as they disembarked from the carriage. "Reverend Porter," he greeted them, "these are our passengers." "Yes, Captain Wallace. This is Malik and Lillian. They need safe passage to Nova Scotia." Captain Wallace nodded, his eyes kind but serious. "I've been briefed on you. A situation," he told them. "My crew is trustworthy and my yacht is fast. We'll have you in Nova Scotia within a week, weather permitting." Lillian felt a surge of hope so strong it brought tears to her eyes. A week. Just one more week, and they would be in Canada. Free. They said goodbye to Reverend Porter, thanking him for his help and courage. Then they boarded the yacht, which cast off immediately, slipping quietly into the dark waters of the harbor. Captain Wallace showed them to a small but comfortable cabin below deck. "Rest," he advised them. "The first part of our journey will be rough. We need to clear the harbor and get to open sea without being spotted by any ships that might be watching for you." Left alone in the cabin, Lillian finally allowed herself to break down, the tension of the past days overwhelming her. Malik held her as she sobbed, his own eyes wet with unshed tears. "We're going to make it," he whispered against her hair. "Just a little longer. One more week." Lillian nodded, trying to believe him. They had come so far, overcome so many obstacles. Surely they would reach safety now. The yacht moved swiftly through the dark waters, its sails full with a strong wind. Captain Wallace was skilled, navigating the busy harbor with confidence, avoiding the larger ships that might have official observers aboard. By dawn, they were in open SEA, the coastline of America, a thin line on the horizon behind them. Lillian stood on deck, watching it disappear, feeling a mixture of sadness and exhilaration. "Are you all right?" Malik asked, joining her at the railing. Lillian nodded. "Just saying goodbye," she said softly. "To everything I've ever known." Malik put his arm around her shoulders. "Not everything," he reminded her. "You still have yourself. And me." Lillian leaned into him, drawing stray nunc from his solid presence. "Yes," she agreed, "I have you. That's all that matters." The journey north was indeed rough, just as Captain Wallace had warned. The weather turned stormy on the second day, forcing them to remain below deck as the yacht pitched and rolled on the angry sea. Lillian was miserably seasick for hours. until Malik found some ginger tea that helped settle her stomach. He held her hair back when she was ill, bathed her forehead with cool cloths, and never once complained about the close quarters or the smell. "I'm sorry," Lillian said weakly after a particularly bad bout. "This isn't very romantic, is it?" Malik smiled, kissing her forehead gently. "This is life," he said simply. "The good and the bad together. That's what love is, being there for all of it." His words warmed her heart, even as her stomach churned with the motion of the ship. Love. He had never said the word before, no, directly about his feelings for her. But there it was, spoken so naturally as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I love you too," Lillian whispered, and was rewarded with a smile that lit up his whole face. The storm passed eventually, and they were able to return to the deck, where the fresh air and the vast expanse of ocean helped restore Lillian's strength and spirits. Captain Wallace was a kind host, sharing meals with them and telling stories of his adventures at sea. "How did you become involved in helping fugitives?" Lillian asked him one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "My wife was a Quaker," the captain replied, his eyes distant with memory. "She believed that all people are equal in the eyes of God. When she died 5 years ago, I decided the best way to honor her memory was to use my wealth and my yacht to help those seeking freedom." "It's a beautiful tribute," Lillian said softly. "She would be proud." The captain nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I like to think so." On the 6th day of their journey, as they were approaching the coast of Nova Scotia, Captain Wallace called them to the deck with an urgent expression. "There's a ship following us," he said without preamble. "Has been since dawn. I've tried changing course, but it stays with us." Lillian's heart sank. "Do you think it's looking for us?" "I don't know," the captain admitted. "But it's faster than we are. If it is hunting you, it will catch us before we reach the coast." Malik's face hardened with determination. "How far are we from Canadian waters?" "About 50 miles, Captain Wallace replied, "but we won't make it at our current speed. Not with that ship gaining on us." "Can we go faster?" Lillian asked desperately. The captain looked up at the sails, already fuel with wind. "I've got every inch of canvas up that this yacht can handle," he said grimly. "We're at our limit." They watched anxiously as the pursuing ship grew larger on the horizon behind them. It was a sleek vessel built for speed, with 3 tall masts and white sails billowing in the wind. "It's definitely following us," Captain Wallace said after an hour of observation, "and it's gaining." By midday, the ship was close enough that they could see figures moving on its deck. Captain Wallace studied it through his spyglass, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "It's the Osprey," he said finally, lowering the glass. "A fast ship known for carrying cargo between New York and Nova Scotia." "The Osprey," Lillian repeated, confused. "But that's the ship we were supposed to take from Philadelphia to Boston. The one Captain Reynolds commanded." "Captain Reynolds?" Wallace looked surprised. "John Reynolds." "Yes," Malik confirmed. "He helped us escape from Charleston. He's the one who connected us with the Underground Railroad." A slow smile spread across Captain Wallace's face. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "John Reynolds is an old friend of mine. We've been helping fugitives reach Canada for years, sometimes working together." He raised his spyglass again, studying the approaching ship more carefully. "Yes, that's John on the deck, I'd recognize. Has he that red beard anywhere?" Relief washed over Lillian like a wave. "So they're not chasing us, they're not slave catchers?" "I don't think so," Wallace replied. "Let me signal them." He hoisted a series of flags up the mast, a private code, he explained, that he and Reynolds had developed for just such situations. After a few minutes, the Osprey responded with its own set of flags. "Well?" Malik asked anxiously. "What did they say?" Captain Wallace lowered his spyglass, his expression grave. "They're warning us there's a ship from New York in Nova Scotia asking questions at all the ports. They think it's your father, Lillian." Lillian's momentary relief vanished, replaced by cold fear. "He's already there? Waiting for us?" "Apparently so," Wallace confirmed. "John is suggesting we change course. Instead of Halifax, we should aim for a smaller port further east. He knows people there who can help you." See, and we trust him? Malik asked, ever cautious. With my life, Wallace said firmly, and yours. They changed course, the Osprey falling in alongside them as an escort. That evening, Captain Reynolds came aboard the yacht for a brief meeting. Edward Rousseau arrived in Halifax 2 days ago, he told them. He's offering $10,000 now for information leading to your capture. 10,000, Lillian gasped. That's insane. He's a desperate man, Reynolds said grimly, and a proud one. He can't accept that his daughter chose a different life, chose freedom with a man he considers property. What do we do now? Malik asked, his arm protective around Lillian's shoulders. We're taking you to a small fishing village called Eagles Cove, Reynolds explained. It's remote, hardly more than a dozen families, but they're good people, and they'll help you get inland away from the coast where your father is searching. It was their best option. The next morning, they spotted the rugged coastline of Nova Scotia in the distance. Instead of heading for Halifax, the main port, they sailed east along the coast until they reached a small natural harbor nestled between rocky cliffs. Eagles Cove was indeed tiny, just a cluster of wooden houses near the shore, fishing boats pulled up on the beach, nets drying in the sun. But as they approached in the yacht, Sayashti's small boat, a group of villagers came out to meet them, alerted by signals from the Osprey which had arrived ahead of them. An older man with a weather-beaten face stepped forward as they reached the shore. I'm Thomas Wilson, he introduced himself. Captain Reynolds told us about your situation. You're welcome here for as long as you need. Tears of gratitude sprang to Lillian's eyes. Even here, in this remote corner of the world, strangers were willing to risk themselves to help two people they had never met. Thank you, she said, her voice choked with emotion. We're so grateful. No need for thanks, Wilson replied kindly. We believe in freedom here. Now come along. My wife has supper waiting, and you look like you could use a hot meal and a proper bed after your journey. The Wilsons' home was small but comfortable, with a roaring fire in the hearth and the smell of fish stew filling the air. Mrs. Wilson, a plump, motherly woman with kind eyes, welcomed them as if they were long-lost children. Over supper, Thomas explained their plan. You can't stay in Eagles Cove long, he told them. Here it's too small, strangers stand out, and if your father extends his search beyond Halifax, he'll eventually check all the coastal villages. Where should we go? Malik asked. Inland, Wilson replied. There's a settlement about 50 miles from here, New Hope. It was founded by freed slaves and abolitionists. You'd be welcome there, and safe. No one would think to look for you in a black settlement. How do we get there? Lillian asked. My son will guide you, Wilson said. He knows the way. You'll travel at night for the first few days just to be safe. It will take about a week on foot. One more journey, one more week. Lillian felt both exhaustion and determination at the thought. They had come so far, across the ocean, to a new country. Surely they could manage this final leg. They spent 2 days in Eagles Cove, resting and preparing for the journey ahead. The villagers provided them with sturdy clothes, boots and supplies, food, blankets, a small tent, and a rifle for protection against wild animals. On the third night they set out, guided by Thomas Wilson's son Michael, a strong, quiet young man who knew the forests and trails like the back of his hand. We'll stay off the main roads, Michael explained as they walked under the cover of darkness. It's slower but safer. The journey was hard, especially for Lillian, who had never walked such distances before. Her feet blistered in the new boots, and her muscles ached from the unaccustomed exercise. But she never complained, never asked to rest longer than necessary. Freedom was too close now to risk any delay. Malik was always by her side, supporting her when she stumbled, encouraging her when her strength flagged. At night, they slept huddled together in the small tent, whispering about their future in New Hope. We could build a house, Malik said one night, his voice soft in the darkness. Nothing fancy at first, just something solid. A couple of rooms, a fireplace. With a garden, Lillian added, warming to the dream. Vegetables, herbs, maybe some flowers. Definitely flowers, Malik agreed, kissing her forehead. Yellow ones to match your hair. They would need work, of course. Malik talked about farming, Perhaps a small plot of land where they could grow crops. Lillian thought she might teach if there were children in the settlement who needed education. "I'm not sure what I know that would be useful," she admitted. "I was taught to play the piano and do embroidery, not practical things." "You'll learn," Malik assured her, "and you already know how to read and write well. That's valuable in itself." On the 5th day of their journey, as they were crossing a wide meadow, Michael suddenly held up his hand for them to stop. "Riders," he said, pointing to the tree line in the distance. "Coming this way." They ducked back into the forest, watching as 3 men on horseback crossed the meadow. They were too far away to make out faces, but something about the lead rider's posture made Lillian's blood run cold. "It's my father," she whispered, though she couldn't possibly be sure at this distance. "I know it is." Michael studied the riders through a small spyglass. "One older man, grey beard," he reported. 2 younger men with him. They look like hired muscle." "It's him," Lillian said, her voice tight with fear. "How did he find us? How did he know we'd be here?" "He doesn't know for sure," Michael said, putting away the spyglass. "They're searching, not tracking, but we need to be more careful now. No more traveling during daylight at all." They retreated deeper into the forest, taking a longer route that avoided any open spaces where they might be spotted. It added at least a day to their journey, but safety was worth the delay. That night, they made camp in a dense thicket. Lillian broke down. "We'll never be free of him," she sobbed against Malik's chest. "He'll hunt us forever. He's so proud, so stubborn. He can't stand the thought that I chose my own path, that I chose you." "He can't search forever," Malik reasoned, stroking her hair. "He has a plantation to run, business to attend to. Eventually, he'll have to give up and go home." "I hope you're right," Lillian said, wiping her tears. "I'm just so tired of running, of being afraid." "We're close now," Malik reminded her. "Michael says we'll reach New Hope tomorrow night. Just one more day." That one more day stretched into 2 as they took an even more circuitous route, avoiding not just open spaces, but also any small farms or settlements where news of strangers might spread. Finally, on the 8th night of their journey, Michael led them to the top of a small hill. Below, in a clearing surrounded by forest, they could see the lights of a village. "New Hope," Michael said simply. Even from a distance, Lillian could tell it was different from any settlement she had seen before. The houses were arranged in a circle around a central open space, not in straight rows along a street. There appeared to be gardens beside each home, and a larger field beyond the circle where crops were growing. "It's beautiful," she whispered. They approached C, Orteously Michael leading the way. At the edge of the clearing, he stopped and made a distinctive bird call, another signal, like the ones the captains had used. After a moment, an answering call came from the village. A man emerged from one of the houses, carrying a lantern, and walked toward them without hesitation. He was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with skin as dark as midnight and a short beard streaked with grey. His eyes, when he raised the lantern to see them better, were kind but watchful. "I'm Moses," he said, his deep voice carrying easily in the night air. "Thomas Wilson sent word you might be coming our way." "I'm Michael Wilson," Michael introduced himself, "and these are Malik and Lillian. They've come a long way seeking freedom." Moses nodded, studying them with interest. "A very long way, from what I hear," he said, "and with quite a story." His gaze lingered on Lillian, early curious about the white woman traveling with a black man, but he asked no questions. "You're welcome in New Hope. Come, let's get you settled. You must be exhausted." He led them into the village, where several other residents had emerged from their homes, curious about the late-night visitors. Lillian felt their eyes on her, felt their surprise at her presence, but there was no hostility in their gazes, only curiosity and cautious welcome. Moses took them to a small cabin at the edge of the village circle. "This has been empty since old Jacob passed last winter," he explained, lighting a lantern inside. "It's yours for as long as you need it." The cabin was simple, just one room with a stone fireplace, a table and chairs, and a bed in the corner. But it was clean and solid, with a roof that wouldn't leak and walls that would keep out the wind. "It's perfect," Lillian said sincerely. "Thank you." "Rest tonight," Moses told them. "Tomorrow, we'll talk more. get you settled in properly." After Moses and Michael left, Lillian and Malik stood in the middle of their new home, hardly able to believe they had finally reached safety. "We made it," Lillian whispered, tears of relief springing to her eyes. "We're really here." Malik pulled her into his arms, his own eyes wet with emotion. "We're here," he agreed. "Together." That night, they slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks, wrapped in each other's arms without fear of discovery or pursuit. It was the deepest, most peaceful sleep either of them had experienced in a very long time. The next morning, they were awakened by a knock at the door. A middle-aged woman stood there with a basket of food and a friendly smile. "I'm Ruth," she introduced herself. "Moses' wife. I brought you some breakfast. Thought you might be hungry after your long journey." His basket contained fresh bread, eggs and fruit. Simple fare, but a feast to Lillian and Malik after days of travel rations. Ruth stayed while they ate, asking gentle questions about their journey, filling them in on life in New Hope. The settlement had been founded 10 years earlier by a group of escaped slaves and abolitionist supporters. There were now 23 families living there, farming the land cooperatively, trading with friendly settlements nearby for things they couldn't produce themselves. "Everyone contributes what they can," Ruth explained. "Some farm, some hunt, some teach the children, some make clothing or tools. We all work together." "What could we do?" Malik asked. "How can we contribute?" Ruth smiled. "Moses will talk to you about that. He's the closest thing we have to a leader, though we make all important decisions together as a community." Later that morning, Moses returned to show them around the settlement. New Hope was even more impressive in daylight. Neat houses with vegetable gardens, a small schoolhouse, a communal barn and workshop, fields of corn and wheat surrounding the central circle. "We're mostly self-sufficient," Moses told them proudly. "We grow our own food, make our own clothes, build our own homes. We only need to trade for metal tools, salt, and a few other necessities." "It's amazing," Lillian said sincerely. "I've never seen anything like it." Moses nodded, pleased by her reaction. "It's taken years of hard work, but we've built something good here, something free." He took them to the workshop, where several men were crafting furniture and tools. "Malik, I understand you're strong and good with your hands," Moses said. "We could use help here if you're willing to learn." Malik agreed enthusiastically, already examining the woodworking tools with interest. "And Lillian," Moses continued, "Ruth tells me you can read and write well." "Yes," Lillian confirmed. "I had a good education, though not in practical matters." "Our teacher, Sarah, could use an assistant," Moses suggested. "We have 15 children in the settlement now, of various ages. Too many for one teacher to manage effectively." Lillian's heart lifted at the thought of working with children. "I would love that," she said, "though I'll need guidance. At first." "Sarah will help you," Moses assured her. "She's been hoping for an assistant for some time." And so began their new life in New Hope. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Malik learned carpentry and proved to have a natural talent for it. Soon he was crafting furniture that other settlements were eager to trade for. Lillian thrived as a teacher's assistant, her natural patience and kindness making her popular with the children. She learned to cook, to garden, to sew clothing, all the practical skills she had never needed as a plantation owner's daughter. They worked on their cabin, adding a second room, improving the fireplace, building proper furniture. They planted a garden just as they had dreamed, with vegetables for eating and yellow flowers that reminded Lillian of home, the good parts of home, the beauty without the cruelty. And through it all their love deepened, strengthened by challenges they had overcome together, by the new life they were building day by day. In the evenings, they would sit on the small porch Malik had built, watching the sunset, talking about their day or sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. These were the moments Lillian cherished most, the quiet, ordinary happiness of being together, of being free. 6 months after their arrival in New Hope, Moses brought news that made Lillian's heart race with anxiety. "There's word from Halifax," he told them as they sat on their porch one evening. "Edward Rousseau has gone back to Charleston. Apparently he ran out of money for his search, spent it all on rewards and hired men." Lillian let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "He's gone? Really gone?" Moses nodded. According to my contacts, he left 3 weeks ago. Said he had a plantation to run and couldn't waste any more time on a foolish, UN-grateful girl who wasn't worth the trouble. The words stung even now, but Lillian felt relief washing over her like a wave. "He's given up," she whispered. "We're truly free now." That night, as they lay in bed, Malik asked her a question that had been on his mind for some time. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked softly. "Leaving everything behind? Your home, your position, your father?" Lillian turned to face him in the darkness, tracing the beloved contours of his face with her fingertips. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment. What I left behind was a cage, not a home. What I found with you is real love, real purpose, real freedom." Malik kissed her then, a kiss full of tenderness and promise. "I want to ask you something," he said when they parted. "Something important." "What is it?" Lillian asked, curious at his suddenly serious tone. "In the eyes of the law, we can't be married," Malik said. "But in the eyes of God, in the eyes of this community, will you be my wife, Lillian? Will you marry me in the way that matters most in our hearts and in our lives?" Tears of joy sprang to Lillian's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, with all my heart." 2 weeks later, on a perfect summer day, the entire settlement gathered in the central circle to witness their commitment. Moses, as the community's spiritual leader, conducted the ceremony. There was no legal document, no official recognition, just two people promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives, witnessed by friends who had become family. Lillian wore a simple white dress that she and Ruth had made together, with yellow flowers in her hair. Malik wore the best clothes he owned, freshly washed and pressed for the occasion. They exchanged rings that Malik had carved from cherry wood, polished until they gleamed like satin. "I take you as my husband," Lillian vowed, her voice clear and strong, "to love and honor, in freedom and in truth, for all the days of my life." "I take you as my wife," Malik responded, his eyes shining with emotion, "to love and protect, to stand beside in joy and in sorrow, as long as we both shall live." Moses smiled broadly as he pronounced them husband and wife in the eyes of God and the community. "What love has joined together, let no one put asunder," he declared. There was a feast afterward, the whole settlement contributing dishes, music and dancing that lasted well into the night. It was a celebration not just of Malik and Lillian's love, but of freedom itself. The freedom to choose one's own path, to love without boundaries, to build a life on one's own terms. Late that night, back in their cabin that was now truly a home, Lillian lay in Malik's arms, happier than she had ever believed it possible. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked softly. "That night in the fire when you carried me out, did you ever imagine we would end up here?" Malik shook his head, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "Never. I just knew I couldn't let you die. I couldn't leave you behind." "You saved me in more ways than one that night," Lillian said, thinking back to the frightened, sheltered girl she had been. "You saved me from the fire, but also from a life half-lived, from never knowing what real love feels like." "We saved each other," Malik corrected her. "Your courage gave me hope when I had none. Your love gave me a reason to be brave." Outside their window, the stars shone brightly in the clear Canadian sky. Inside, in the warmth of their bed, Lillian and Malik held each other close, grateful for the journey that had brought them here, excited for the future they would build together. They had lost much along the way: family, home, position, security. But what they had found was worth infinitely more: freedom, purpose, community, and a love strong enough to overcome every obstacle, to walk through fire and emerge, like Phoenix from the ashes, reborn. In the years that followed, Lillian would sometimes think back to that night, the night of the fire that had changed everything. She would remember standing at her window, watching the slave quarters in the distance, wondering about the quiet man who kept to himself, who seemed different somehow from the others. She could never have imagined then the journey that lay ahead, the dangers they would face, the love that would grow between them. She could never have predicted that a simple act of heroism, Malik running back into a burning house to save her, would set in motion a chain of events that would transform both their lives forever. Their story became something of a legend in New Hope and in other settlements along the Underground Railroad. The plantation owner's daughter and the enslaved man who risked everything for freedom and love. People told it around fires on cold winter nights, passed it on to children and grandchildren as an example of courage and hope. But for Malik and Lillian, it wasn't a legend or a fairy tale. It was simply their life, the life they had chosen, the life they had fought for, the Lee Fay they built together, day by day, moment by moment. And on a summer evening 5 years after their arrival in New Hope, as they sat on their porch watching their toddler son playing in the garden, Lillian reflected on the strange winding path that had led them here. "Are you happy?" Malik asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Lillian smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Completely," she said. "Are you?" Malik looked at their son, at the home they had built, at the woman beside him who had given up everything to be with him. "More than I ever thought possible," he said softly. Their son ran to them then, a chubby 3-year-old with his father's dark eyes and his mother's smile, clutching a yellow flower in his small hand. "For you, Mama," he said, offering the slightly crushed blossom. Lillian took it with a smile, lifting him onto her lap. "Thank you, Edward," she said, using the name Thai had chosen together, not for her father, but for the idea of building something new from the ashes of the past. As the sun set over New Hope, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Lillian held her son close, her husband's arm around them both. The journey had been long and dangerous, filled with fear and uncertainty. But here, in this moment, with the people she loved most in the world, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where he was meant to be. From the ashes of her old life, a new one had risen, stronger, truer, and infinitely more precious. And for that, she would be forever grateful. The end.